Chapter 2868. Marry Me. 3. Injusi raised his hand and pointed at her temple. You have helped me a lot in the past, and for that, I shall keep you alive, but you are not allowed to spoil my plan. You should stay here quietly for a while. In 8 years, you will recover. A swirl of devil energy surrounded Meng Liuxiang, turning every inch of her body into lifeless stone. Eventually, she became a dark green jade statue. Injusi then placed her in a pile of stones, which made it unlikely for anyone to identify her, for every stone looked almost the same. He then turned to look at the 4 ferocious beasts in the vicinity. Confidently, he rolled up his sleeves and attacked them. The 4 beasts howled in unison before throwing themselves at the man. Indeed, it was a great battle. Gu Shijiu finally had the chance to see how great Injusi's kung fu actually was from the second battle. As soon as the fight began, his thunderous charge of attacks was very breathtaking. When the battle was over, he stood in calmness and serenity at the other end of the field, as if nothing had happened. He must be a great deity by now, but only publicly revealed himself as a golden immortal. Meng Liuxiang had no chance against him at all, really. Even if she really did her best, there was no possibility that she could defeat him. She would end up becoming a stone, regardless. Gu Shijiu started regarding the man with high esteem. She continued to observe him, and a sudden inspiration came to mind. The current Devil King was incompetent and muddle-headed, thus giving the regent a chance to snatch his authority. To make matters worse, the regent was also known for his utter violence. He was prone to murder and manslaughter, with no regard for the Devil King at all. Anyone who was not on his team would be slaughtered immediately. Sometimes, the victim's entire family would be involved too. The Devil Kingdom was never at peace because of this dictator. Many people had to suffer injustice with infuriating devastation. Even the common people had to suffer, burdened with all sorts of taxes. Any resistance would be met with violence as well as the death of many innocent lives. Fortunately, the Devil King's son was naturally a ruler. He should be the one that Di Fui was trying to help. If the man succeeded the throne, it would be a blessing to the people of the Devil Kingdom. Although the beasts were savagely fierce, they were no match to Injusi. About an hour later, all 4 beasts were well beaten. Severely injured, they lay almost motionless on the ground with no intention to interfere with Injusi's business on the field anymore. Soon, Injusi managed to collect the number of herbs needed. Distracted, he turned around and saw a young lady standing not too far away from him. The lady was dressed entirely in blue, with her long hair brushing over her shoulder. She looked only about 17 years old and stood gracefully, surrounded by a tint of auspicious aura. Breathlessly, there were no words he could possibly use to describe her ethereal beauty. Frozen, he stood watching the lady in astonishment. He thought that he already had everything in his surroundings under control, as even the slightest disturbance would have caught his attention. Therefore, the lattice presence was an unpleasant surprise. He did not even know for how long she had been around. More importantly, the lady was very intimidating despite her youthful appearance. He felt the need to surrender to her authority, even when they were standing pretty far apart. "Oh, for you." Smilingly, the lady answered his confusion, "The god of creation." In shock, Injusi felt as though the entire scene was surreal. He was dumbstruck and in disbelief. Obviously, they had never met before, so he still had his doubts. "But when did you? How long have you been here?" The lady was actually Gu Shijiu. She casually flicked her fingers and nonchalantly replied, "Longer than you have." Injusi did not utter a word. Meanwhile, Gu Shijiu sat down on a rock and smilingly continued, "Are you going to kill me as well?" Injusi gave in. "I dare not." He responded courteously, but the folded paper fan in his hand was still tightly in his grasp. Obviously, he did not completely trust her. Chapter 2869. Marry Me. 4. Gu Shijiu pretended that she did not notice the oddity in his behavior. There has been quite a big fuss here, but none of the soldiers seem to have been alerted. Don't you think it is a little strange? Perplexed, Injusi had thought the same. He was prepared if any troops were to approach him, but not one soldier showed up at the peak. He was smart enough to make the correct speculation. Divine Lord, you are the one helping me, aren't you? Gu Shijio softly answered, I have not done much, actually. I have only secured the peak with a soundproof wizardry barrier. Even though it did not sound like much, it was the very help that he needed. Jusi bowed before her as a token of gratitude. Thank you very much, Divine Lord. Anxious and slightly doubtful, he asked, May I know what brings you here? Are you really here just to help me out? I am here to talk business, Gu Shijio smilingly said. Business? What sort of business? Jusi looked at her in bewilderment. As the Divine Lord, she was known to be the greatest and the strongest person that ever existed. There should be nothing that she could not solve or acquire on her own. What sort of business was there to talk about? Gu Shijio continued, I have only helped you to keep the volume down so that your identity would not be exposed. But if you left the checkpoint by the hill all alone, it would definitely cause an alarm. With so many of the soldiers there, you might not be able to get away so quickly. Have you thought about that? With a sigh, Jusi had to agree with her. He had thought about the consequences, but the battle was inevitable. So, he thought he would just get it over with there and then. Nevertheless, since the creator of the universe had brought it up, he humbly asked for Gu Zijia's opinion. Divine Lord, have you got anything in mind? Of course, I will solve the problem for you, only if you promise me a favor in return. Your safety will thus be guaranteed if you agree to my terms. Still puzzled, Jusi was unsure of the task that he was about to do for the Divine Lord. With a deep breath and a bow, he nonetheless agreed to her. May I know how I can be of service to you? As long as I can fulfill the task, I will give everything I can to achieve it. I am willing to risk my life. There is no need for you to risk your life. What I will ask for is really simple. You can easily make it happen. What is it? Marry me. Jusi could no longer keep his mind straight. The folded paper fan slipped from his grasp and fell right onto the ground. He could not believe his ears. He was utterly surprised that the Divine Lord was actually one of his many admirers. Although he was well aware of his popularity, he did not realize it was to this extent. He felt like he was the luckiest man on earth. Are you asking me to marry you? He stammered. Gu Shijio had to make herself clear. Of course, it is not a real marriage. I only need you to play the role of my husband for the next 3 years. Jusi remained quiet. He did not understand why the facade was necessary, but there did not seem to be a reason for him to reject the request. Quickly, he accepted his fate and agreed to her. Gu Shijio had never thought that a simple visit to the Devil Kingdom would solve her current biggest problem. Delighted, she also added, Don't worry. When everything is done, I will compensate you fairly for your contribution. Then, she made a swift turn and transformed herself into Meng Liuxiang. Let's go, she said. In awe, Jusi was finally convinced of her identity. Only she could disguise herself as someone else so quickly and so perfectly. Thus he followed her lead. Where are you going after this? Gu Shijio casually asked. At this point, Jusi would rather be honest with her. I am going to meet National Master D in Huanglai City. Have you guys agreed to meet there? Gu Shijio was quite surprised. We agreed to meet today at 1:30 in the Tianfeng restaurant of Huanglai City, Jusi answered with a firm nod. Chapter 2870, Dowry and Betrothal Gifts. Gu Shijio realized that it was only half an hour away from her supposed meeting with Di Fui. They had agreed to meet at 2 o'clock and at the same place. Perhaps Di Fui needed to see Jusi first to obtain the devil-resisting herbs before meeting her so that all 3 of them could enter the Devil Kingdom together. Since the 3 of them were going to meet at the same place, they might as well meet at the same time. Therefore, Gu Shijio told Jusi about her meeting with Di Fui and that she would like all of them to meet together. He agreed. With the help of the god of creation, there was no way Jusi could not take control of the kingdom. Gu Shijio made for a great companion by walking through the checkpoint with Jusi. None of the soldiers suspected a thing. As practiced, Jusi turned to her and said in front of the soldiers, Liuxiang, you should go back to Shura City first. There is somewhere else I need to be. See you around. Gu Shijio acknowledged it, All right, I will wait for you in Shura City. She then leaped onto the back of a black crane and left the hill. Injusi, on the other hand, took his ride on another black crane and went in the opposite direction. These soldiers could not help but make fun of Injusi, claiming that the princess must be blind to have her eyes locked on a playboy with nothing but fancy clothes. Nevertheless, with a sigh, they wished they could be just as lucky. Little did they know that the real princess was still at the peak, unable to call out to them for help. After traveling on the black crane for a few miles, Gu Shijio then teleported away. She met up with Injusi before leaving the Devil Kingdom. Although Huanglai City belonged to the human world, its close proximity to the Devil Kingdom had attracted many visitors. There was an unwritten law that prohibited any fight or outrage between the humans and the devils. Once violated, the parties involved would be served with a death penalty. Therefore, the people of different worlds were able to live in peace in the city. Tianfeng Restaurant was the place with the best food in Huanglai City, so many high officials of the Devil Kingdom and the human world were their regular customers. No one knew that Injusi was actually the owner of the Tianfeng Restaurant. He had his own private room here in the restaurant, so he took Gu Shijio there to wait for Di Fuyi's arrival. They were an hour early, so Di Fuyi was not around yet. Injusi asked the waiter to prepare a pot of tea and specifically requested for the best tea leaves around. It was good to have some tea while killing time. Gu Shijio could not show her true self here in public, so she took the camouflage of a regular woman. Having a beautiful woman next to Injusi was only a normal occurrence, so Gu Zijia's presence did not attract any unnecessary attention. Injusi was an excellent brewer. The pot of tea had a good taste and a marvelous fragrance. Gu Shijio watched with delight as he brewed the tea in front of her from infusion to presentation. She then took a sip of the tea and was happy with its taste. Right after that, they started talking about their wedding plans. She wanted to get it done as soon as possible, as any undue delay might bring more trouble than necessary. She wanted the ceremony to be as grand as possible so that everyone from all 6 worlds would learn about it. It was a great deal with excellent prospects for Injusi, so he agreed to Gu Zijia's every request. Everything was still very surreal to him, so he could not believe that any of it was happening. He then tried to think about how the wedding would influence his plans. Even with Di Fuyi's help, there were still many things that needed to be done for him to get to where he wanted. He would need at least 3 years to achieve his goal, assuming he would even survive the dangers that lay ahead. But with the creator of the universe as his wife, it was only natural for him to succeed the throne as the Devil King. All of his people and the officials would definitely support him. Chapter 2871, Dowry and Betrothal Gifts. 2. Injusi would also garner the support of his people and the highest officials in the Devil Kingdom. If he worked a little harder, perhaps, there was even a chance that he could unite all of 6 worlds into one. The offer of marriage from Gu Shijio appeared to be an unexpected windfall for the man. It still felt like a dream to him. In order to make sure that it was real, he decided to give his thigh a hard pinch. The pain reminded him that he was indeed living in reality. And just like that, he was on cloud 9 once he realized that the wedding was really happening. After giving it some thought, he suddenly reached into his bag to retrieve an emerald green jade and a pearl the size of a fist. Seemingly inadequate, he then put down another dagger forged of solid iron and a black pill on the table. "Please accept these," he offered. Puzzled, Gu Shijio stared at him for an answer. Injusi blushed a little. "These betrothal gifts are all that I can offer at the moment. Sorry that they may be a little simple. Divine Lord, I hope you can accept these first. I promise to offer more in the future when I can afford it." Gu Shijio did not know what to say. She knew all about the nature of the goods. The jade piece was crafted from the highest class of emerald jadestone, and the pearl was equipped with a spiritual aura that money could not buy. As for the iron dagger, it was considered a magical item. Its spiritual intelligence allowed it to be controlled by its master via a telepathic connection. Finally, the pill was magical and could be used to heal all sorts of external injuries. Every single item was precious, but the man had made it seem like it was all that he could afford at the moment. He was clearly sincere. However, Gu Shijio was not going to accept his offer. "You don't need to give me anything. The wedding is all but a show. Jusi answered in all seriousness, I understand. Although it is only a show, I shall not take it for granted. These betrothal gifts are still a must. If anything, it will make this scheme look more believable. She was not expecting that answer even though what he said made sense. Gu Shijio did not want to take advantage of him, so she offered him a few items in return. These are for you. Take these as my dowry. Gu Shijio had collected many magical items over the years. She had given him a universal bag, some herbs, and an impenetrable armor. She put these things on the table, which immediately outshone everything that Jusi had to offer. Jusi was dumbfounded at the sight of her generosity. He felt different, like a poor kid who was lucky enough to have met with a wealthy princess. Divine Lord, what you have offered are of much greater value than what I have given you, he bitterly said. Smilingly, Gu Shijio answered, as I said, if you agree to help me out, I will surely repay your favor very generously. Jusi wanted to defend himself but was immediately interrupted. All right, you should take it easy. Let's talk about the details of the wedding. We should agree on a time and place, as well as a list of guests. Yes, we should really talk about the details of our wedding. What if we set the date a month from now? A sudden voice chimed in. Isn't that a little rushed? Gu Shijio blurted out her thoughts, only to realize that something was not quite right. A sudden realization struck her, so she turned around to see who had actually spoken. The curtains were now lifted, revealing a man by the door. Apart from his exceedingly beautiful face, the typical purple robes immediately revealed his identity. Gracefully, Di Fui made his entrance. National Master Di. Jusi got up to greet him with a bow. Gu Shijio took a look at the hourglass in the corner and realized that they were only due to meet half an hour later. Di Fui was early. Chapter 2872, Dowry and Betrothal Gifts, 3. Di Fui politely replied with a smile, it is all right. The moment Jusi stood up straight, he could immediately tell that there was something more behind the man's awfully courteous smile. Di Fui looked at him sternly in the eye and sent quick chills down his spine. After a short pause, he smiled apologetically and said, National Master Di, I believe that you have heard our plan, haven't you? Should the wedding be carried in a month? Di Fui took a look at Gu Shijio before giving a nonchalant answer. Sure. You are invited to be one of our guests. Jusi was dumbfounded. Huh. Gu Shijio was about to take a sip of tea before Di Fui dropped the bomb on them. In response to his calm reply to Jusi, she spilled her tea all over the table. Di Fui no longer paid his attention to the other man in the room. Instead, he pulled a chair over to sit down by the table before grasping Gu Shijio by her hand. Baby, I have made up my mind. Let's have our wedding a month from now. You can pick anywhere you like. As for the guests, I will definitely invite all my friends and companions from all 6 worlds to witness our union. It will surely be a grand event. With shiver down her spine, Gu Shijio was utterly surprised to be called his baby. His words hit Gu Shijio hard in the face. She looked at him fixedly and could not believe anything that he had just said. She even forgot to pull her hand out of his awkward grasp. Wait a moment. What about our wedding? Di Fui slowly traced a strand of loose hair to the back of her ear. Stop messing with me, will you? The romantic gesture also came as a shock to her. Gu Shijio could not understand. How was she messing with him exactly? Jusi had dated enough women to get a brief grasp of their current awkwardness. He quickly studied the two of them and came up with a bold guess. From his point of view, the Divine Lord and Di Fui used to be together, but Di Fui must have done something unwittingly offensive, which resulted in an impulsive decision of Gu Shijio wanting to marry another man. Unfortunately, Jusi was the unlucky man who had become her rebound. He finally understood why the Divine Lord insisted on coming along with him to meet Di Fui, all 3 of them together. No wonder she wanted to talk about the plans for their wedding. It was all but a show for Di Fui. While he was still caught in the preoccupation, Di Fui could be seen pushing all of the gifts away. In fact, as soon as Jusi recollected all of the items, he was asked to leave. You should go now, Di Fui suggested. Jusi also felt that his presence was completely unnecessary given the current circumstances. He apologetically said, "All right, you both should talk. I shall go out and take a walk." He then turned and left hastily. Finally, the man realized that jackpots never existed. It was all but a trap. It was a nice dream, but it was now time to wake up. He needed to leave and spend some time alone. Gu Shijio finally freed her hand from his grasp. "Di Fui, what did you mean?" A suitable candidate was undeniably hard to come by, so his sudden interruption had ruined her entire plan. What was he trying to do? "Why didn't you look for me?" Di Fui locked his eyes on her. Gu Shijio took a look at the hourglass in the corner before replying to him, "It is not time yet. There is still an hour to go before we should meet. I'm not talking about our meeting later. Why didn't you look for me when you needed a wedding? After all, I am your fiancé." Gu Shijio was surprised. "What are you talking about? What fiancé?" Di Fui rolled up his sleeve to reveal the bracelet on his wrist. Chapter 2873, Dowry and Betrothal Gifts, 4. Di Fui rolled up his sleeve to reveal the bracelet on his wrist. "Have you forgotten about the bracelet? This is a love bracelet, which means you are destined to be my wife." Gu Shijio was dumbstruck. In fact, she had tried many ways to get rid of the bracelet, but none of them worked. As time went by, the bracelet slowly turned invisible on her wrist. Since then, it never showed itself again. It reached the point where she had almost forgotten about it entirely. She took a look at her hand to make sure that there was no sight of the bracelet. Then, she took a breath before explaining herself. "As I said, it was an accident, so it does not count. See, the bracelet is..." She was about to say that the bracelet was not there, but little did she know that the bracelet was about to show up. First, she noticed that something was heating up on her wrist, and before she knew it, the bracelet reappeared on her wrist after a decade of disappearance. It made a rather surprising entrance. Gu Shijio was completely blown away, but Di Fui, on the other hand, decided to ask her a question on purpose. "The bracelet is... what?" She had to change her sentence. "The bracelet is nothing special. It has been around for too long, so it is not functioning quite well." Di Fui looked at her intensely. "Let's talk." "About what?" "Our wedding." The discussion continued. The teapot was changed along with the cups. By now, other than the hot water, every other thing on the table was solely prepared by Di Fui. He had even brought the best kind of charcoal with him that smelled of fruitwood. Di Fui could hardly cook, but his tempering technique was quite impressive. Without a doubt, the tea leaves were of the highest quality as well. Since the brewing technique was better, the taste of the tea far surpassed the one prepared by Jusi. Gu Shijio had 3 cups of tea, which had given her enough time to tell Di Fui everything that he needed to know. She clarified once again that the marriage was not real, but only a show, as she needed to make sure that her disciple would give up on her once and for all. Di Fui agreed to play along. Also, he promised to perfect his acting skills so that no one would suspect that they were pretending. Deep down, Gu Shijio knew very well that Di Fui was the perfect candidate for her, but she refused to take advantage of him, so she had to turn her target to someone else. "Di Fui, there is something I do not understand." "You may ask." "You refuse to be my disciple, but you are willing to play along in this wedding game. But you have to know that for the next 3 years, you will have to play the role of my husband, which makes you a married man. If you happen to meet someone else that you like, you will not be allowed to marry her." Read more new novels on List Novel. Di Fui continued to play with the bracelet on his wrist before responding, "I had never planned on marrying anyone, so that is not a concern." Gu Shijio had to correct him, "It is hard to tell. It only takes a brief moment to fall in love. You have yet to find someone you truly like, but that does not mean that you will never find someone. Also, there is one more thing that you need to know. I am the god of creation. Even when I am married, I will not move out of where I live. Instead, the groom will have to move into the Tianyin Valley with me. Do you mind? You really need to think carefully about your decision. You should not force yourself into something you do not want." According to the social norm, a bride should move in with her groom and not vice versa, but not many cared about it. Di Fui was an arrogant man, so Gu Shijio suspected that he really needed to control his ego in order to move in with his bride or soon-to-be wife. Apparently, she had underestimated him. I have thought about it all. I agree to do it. Chapter 2874. We need to display our affection publicly. Gu Shijio remained quiet. All she could think of right now is that she was truly lucky to have met him. What do you need in return? She asked after heaving a sigh of relief. His quick response made Gu Shijio feel rather surreal. Di Fui looked at her intensely and said, I only have one condition. In order to make this look as convincing as possible, you are required to do exactly as I say. Okay, Gu Shijio answered without any hesitation. Di Fui was a great actor, so he would definitely be able to play the role of her husband and convince Fan Qianshi to give her up once and for all. The dowries were initially meant for Yin Jusi were still on the table, but he was already out of the picture. Di Fui took a look at those gifts and kept them away hastily. I will keep these for myself, he said. Gu Shijio did not expect that he would be so obsessed with the gifts. What about my betrothal gifts from you? She quickly added. Di Fui blinked at her in confusion. I do not have many things. In fact, I can only offer myself to you. Also, I will be moving into the Tianyin Valley to live with you. So are the gifts really necessary? Gu Shijio did not know how to argue with him. Honestly, she did not really care about the gifts. It was only a show, after all. All he needed to do was to put on a good show. Read more new novels on List Novel. Then, they talked about the details of their planned relationship and immediately reached an agreement. The wedding would be held a month later, but before that, Gu Shijio would agree to spend some time with him in the Devil Kingdom. Di Fui told her that nothing would remain a secret forever, so it would be best if they were the only two who knew about their current situation. No one else should be informed. Otherwise, any spilled news would become clues for Fan Qianshi to find out the truth. Gu Shijio was still worried. But Yin Jusi, he already knows about it. Di Fui gently squeezed her hand and said, Don't worry. Yin Jusi thinks that you were only going after him for a fake wedding because we argued, and you needed to vent your anger. He will never find out that our wedding is all made up. Gu Shijio finally heaved a long sigh of relief. She realized why Yin Jusi left so hastily. At first, she thought that Yin Jusi was so intimidated by Di Fui. It turned out that he was actually feeling awkward. What a misunderstanding, she thought to herself. She wanted to take a sip of tea but realized that her hand was still in his hand. She could feel his warmth on her skin and felt rather uncomfortable. It felt as though there was a steady stream of heat slowly entering her veins. With a tug, she tried to free her hand, but could not. She wanted to try to pull away harder this time but was distracted by someone coughing at the door. Yin Jusi was back. Yin Jusi was a man of sufficient intelligence and understanding. May I serve the food now? He had to ask for their permission first. Surely you may. Please come in and eat with us, Gu Shijio offered. Also, she felt the need to remind Di Fui again, You should let go of my hand, she said while giving another pull. Baby, we need to display our affection publicly. Di Fui only gave her a tight smile, without any intention of letting her hand go. Gu Shijio said nothing more. The moment Yin Jusi entered the room, he felt terribly uncomfortable by the sight of the couple being overly attached to one another. Di Fui was sitting closely next to Gu Shijio, whilst holding her hand. It was as if they were glued together. Yin Jusi had to move his eyes away from them just to feel less awkward. He still had some doubts about their complicated relationship before he entered the room, but most of his suspicions disappeared when he saw the couple's current interactions. The man was once her fiancé, though just for a while. But it was not real. There was no way for him to find the courage to make any contact or even hold her hand. He needed to be mentally prepared before even moving slightly closer to her. Chapter 2875. We need to display our affection publicly, too. Unfortunately for Yin Jusi, the couple were getting very comfortable with one another in front of him and had no issues displaying their affection for one another publicly. As a result, Yin Jusi chose to sit opposite them to keep a distance. Apart from watching them make plans for their wedding, he also had to witness many coolie moments from the pair. For example, Di Fui would prepare her tea and serve the dishes to her personally. He would even remove any shells from the seafood before serving it to his lady. The man had to inspect everything before Gu Shijio was served. Prior to this uncomfortable encounter, Yin Jusi deemed himself to be a rather popular man among women, thinking that he knew everything that a woman wanted. However, what National Master Di had displayed right before his eyes was way better than he could ever imagine. Many of the courtesies he offered to Gu Shijio were acts he could never see himself doing for a woman. Read more new novels on List Novel. Even though Gu Shijio looked a little reluctant to accept his chivalry, she did not turn him down. In fact, her slight discomfort made them look exactly like a couple that had just fought. In just that one meal with them, Yin Jusi became fully convinced that they were actually a couple. With that, he felt lucky for not getting himself involved in their relationship, otherwise, he would be right in the middle of their conflict. Not all was lost for Yin Jusi, for Di Fui also took the time to talk to him about their next steps. Despite a brief discussion over a meal, Yin Jusi was impressed by National Master Di's political wisdom and his well-thought plans. The man was indeed the pillar behind the rapid development of the two kingdoms he had graced. Moreover, he was well informed about the complicated organizational affiliation in the Devil Kingdom. Every man had his own character, but Di Fui already had it all figured out. His analysis included many names who had the potential to become his allies and others who had the chance of becoming his enemies. Most importantly, he also came up with a list of people who could end up becoming his right-hand men. Every point was very well organized and articulated, so Di Fui did not need to talk much. Hearing his brilliant views expressed succinctly had suddenly enlightened Yin Jusi. In return, Di Fui also asked for Yin Jusi's opinions and listened to him attentively without uttering a single word when he spoke. By the end of the sharing, Di Fui gave him some advice and suggestions. Those included some priorities that he needed to sort out. Their discussion went quite far. They even started planning how to plot against the regent. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio listened to every bit of their rather important plan and sighed. It appeared that Di Fui seemed to trust her wholeheartedly, with no intention to keep her away from any of his plans. Despite being the creator of the universe, her primary role was to secure the peace and harmony of all 6 worlds by getting rid of or at least reducing the impact of catastrophes that would cause great suffering. Yet, she was never interested in politics, nor had she been involved. She was far too superior to be involved in this sort of mundane discussion, anyway. Fortunately, she had spent enough time traveling to different places around the world to hear from the grounds itself about the public opinion they had of their leaders. She would typically disguise herself when she did so. However, no amount of research could solve the actual problem, which was her lack of involvement in politics. Therefore, the discussion had become an eye-opener to Gu Shijio. She remained quiet the whole time, not because she had nothing to say, but because of the impropriety of her political stance. As the creator of the universe, she was forbidden to make any plans for any party. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, Yin Jusi left with a happy heart. Gu Shijio took a look at Di Fui, who was still sitting comfortably in the restaurant with no intention to leave. "Aren't you going to the Devil Kingdom? Why don't we go together with him?" "Now is not the time." Gu Shijio then took a sip of tea and continued, "The tasks you assign to him will be quite a burden. Any miscalculation would send his whole family to their death. Aren't you worried about getting him killed by the regent? After all, he is the candidate that you have been looking for to replace the current Devil King. The execution of your plan depends on him." Di Fui briefly replied, "If he cannot fulfill the tasks, it only means that he does not have the potential to be a good ruler. If he wants my help, he needs to prove his worth. Are you looking to become the uncrowned king of all 6 worlds?" Chapter 2876. We need to display our affection publicly. 3. Di Fui answered confidently, "Why not?" He then burst out laughing before continuing, "The 6 worlds long for a time of tranquility and prosperity. I will do my best to turn the mess around and restore peace." His statement was nothing short of arrogant, but Gu Shijio did not find it revolting in any way. On the contrary, she found him quite attractive now that she had seen another side of him. Nevertheless, his attractive physical appearance also played a part in that. Since Gu Shijio was much older than everyone else, she found it difficult to be impressed by others. Di Fui, however, was an exception. He appeared to be a man of exceptional abilities, and more importantly, he seemed like someone whom she could trust. The more she stared at him, the more she felt a spark in her heart. Never had she encountered such feelings before, so she was curious too. Meanwhile, Di Fui reflected on her concerns and abruptly added, "Don't you worry." Gu Shijio was no longer on the same page. Was there anything that she should be worried about? As always, you will remain as the creator of the universe for all eternity. I shall never replace you, Di Fui reassured. With a smile and a gentle tap on his shoulder, Gu Shijio responded cheerfully, "You have overthought. In fact, I cannot wait for you to take over my role, so All of a sudden, she stopped speaking as she was not sure if she was allowed to reveal such a secret. Nonetheless, Di Fui knew that something was up. "What about you?" "So that I can rest. Being the creator of the universe is quite an exhausting job. I would rather travel the world freely without any responsibilities or commitments." Di Fui rubbed her hair and replied, "Don't worry. When my job here in the 6 worlds is done, I will go everywhere with you, and we can do anything you want. It is just the 2 of us now, so there is no need for you to continue acting," Gu Shijio smilingly teased. He kept spoiling her, which was something she was not quite used to. She almost thought that he was being serious about getting married. Di Fui looked at her intensely. "The show must go on. You have to get used to it. Otherwise, we will easily expose our secret," he responded with a smile. With a smirk, Gu Shijio answered, "You are such a good actor." She then added after a sigh, "I am glad that we are not enemies. Otherwise, I would surely have a hard time." She heard about the secret plans that he made with Injusi. Most of it was quite cruel and relentless. A chill ran down her spine when they exchanged their thoughts, as she had never thought that he would be this iron-hearted when he had to deal with his enemies. He would make a good friend or a disastrous enemy. Understanding what Gu Shijio meant, Di Fui sighed. "Shijio, some things cannot be distinguished entirely between good and bad. As long as what we want in the end is good, the process should not matter too much." He was right. Not all war tactics were honest and forthright. Sometimes, violence must be met with violence. Sometimes, killing was necessary to prevent the loss of more innocent lives. One had to be tough during these harsh times. As the saying went, a good man would never rule for long. The current Devil King was a good example. In fact, he was a scholar. His poems were highly appraised by society. However, his poetic talent was not quite helpful when it came to the ruling of a kingdom. He did not have the eye for people and certainly did not know how to distinguish the good ones from the bad ones. Also, he did not have a firm stance on matters and listened to whatever he was told. Very often, he would find himself indulging in bottles of wine with beautiful companions by his side, possibly distracted by his enemies. And soon, his power of governance fell into the hands of the regent, thus putting the masses in dire poverty. When a king was a bad ruler, the kingdom would have to suffer with him. An innocent man would only get himself into trouble because of his power. He was obviously incapable of ruling, and yet he refused to retire. Thus, removing him was the only way. Di Fui's plan for Injusi was to get rid of the king through the hands of another man. Chapter 2877. We need to display our affection publicly, for this tactic was somehow dirty, but it was meant to minimize casualties. Even though Gu Shijio did not quite have first-hand experience in politics, she understood the general rules. It was just that she could not get involved in them herself. All of a sudden, Gu Shijio found herself staring at him in a daze. She somehow felt that she had seen him before, perhaps a few years ago. It was as if she recognized him from the past and knew deep down that he would be a decisive figure who could control the world and the life of people. But who he really? When she came back to her senses, she noticed Di Fui looking at her with a complicated expression on his face. "Who are you thinking of?" Her eyes were clearly on him, but it seemed that she was looking at another person through him, which made him a bit uncomfortable. Apparently, this person was really sensitive. Gu Shijio did not want to talk anymore. She got up and replied, "You have overthought. Well, since you don't want to enter the Devil Kingdom for the time being, let's just split up here. Contact me again when you want to go in." When she was with him, she felt inexplicably pressured. All she wanted now was to escape. But just when she was about to leave, she was grasped by Di Fui. "We can go in now, come with me." Gu Shijio was speechless. She subconsciously looked at the hourglass and noticed that it was only half an hour past the time when they were supposed to enter the Devil Kingdom. Evidently, when he said that he would delay the visit, he only meant to delay it by half an hour. A melodious tune from Silk Bamboo sounded in everyone's ears. There was an azure ship in the air with 10 waiters and 10 maids at the back of the vehicle. White threads seemed to be floating on the vessel as the ship stopped in the clouds. This scene was unusually grand and also quite extraordinary. The people in Huanglai City had just witnessed an exceptional scene. They had seen various luxury cars of the dignitaries from the human and devil world, but it was the first time they had seen such a spectacular vehicle in front of their very eyes. Needless to say, many onlookers were gossiping with one another to identify the owner of the vessel. When Gu Shijio saw the ship, she could not help but look at it a few times. She commented casually, "It seems that the owner of this vehicle is a very unconventional figure. He actually got a boat to fly in the sky, dazzling like a peacock opens its wings. Baby, this is my ride. Let's go." Di Fui whispered in her ear and then pulled her by the hand and flew up onto the floating boat. Gu Shijio was speechless. She thought that Di Fui would enter the devil world quietly and then secretly wait for an opportunity to take action. She did not expect him to be so high-profile. Was he trying to make everyone aware of his presence? Read more new novels on List Novel. Moreover, this ship was so big and so dazzling. When it was flying in the dark sky of the devil world, it was merely a live target for his enemies. Wasn't he afraid of people in the devil world who wanted to plot against him? Di Fui had been traveling around the 6 realms for so many years, so there were quite a lot of people who could actually recognize him. What's more, after he got on the boat, the little fairy boy who stood at the bow of the ship opened up a big banner. The word "D" fluttered in the wind. It seemed this man wanted everyone to know his name. The people on the ground were fiercely discussing the matter when they saw the banner from below. These years, Di Fui's name was so famous to the extent that even the common people were so excited when they heard his name. People in the human world and the devil world were secretly hoping that he could come to their own world because his arrival represented reformation and hope that the people could live a comfortable life in the future. Now that he finally appeared in such a high-profile manner, the people were naturally excited and speculated about the purpose of his visit. Of course, the spies of the devil and human worlds had also quickly sent the news back to their own circles. While people were still guessing the purpose of Di Fui's arrival, they also noticed that Gu Shijio was with him. Chapter 2878. We need to display our affection publicly. 5. Gu Shijio was disguised in an ordinary woman's outfit, so when she stood beside Di Fui, it made her look somewhat dull. Over the past few years, Di Fui had slowly become the dream lover of countless girls in the 6 realms. However, he had always been self-disciplined. Apart from the ruler of the monster kingdom whom he had once assisted, he had never been seen with other women. So now that Gu Shijio was standing beside him so openly with Di Fui holding her hand, this naturally stirred the curiosity of the people while simultaneously crushing the glass hearts of the numerous girls present. All of a sudden, there was loud buzzing going around with people trying to guess the identity of the woman next to Di Fui. Read more new novels on List Novel. Some guessed that she was an immortal from the celestial kingdom, while others speculated that she was the enchantress of the devil kingdom. There were even those who thought that she was his younger sister. Needless to say, a myriad of theories went flying around the place. Despite there being conflicting views on who the woman could be, there was one thing that everyone could agree on. The two of them looked like they were from socially different worlds. No one could understand why Di Fui would fall for such an ordinary woman. Was it true that only an ugly man could get a pretty wife? Do you want to restore your authentic appearance? Di Fui asked her. Gu Shijio did not care. No, I don't care about how I look in the public eye. Then, Gu Shijio pulled a chessboard out of nowhere and said, The journey is so boring. Do you want to play a game? The little fairy on the boat also secretly looked down on the ordinary-looking Gu Shijio. However, since the crew was well-educated, they did not reveal their true feelings on their face. They merely despised her inside their heart. When they saw her wanting to play a game of chess with their master, they involuntarily sneered in their heart. Their master was a champion in chess. To their knowledge, he had never lost a game. In fact, he single-handedly defeated many chess masters on his own. Therefore, it was beyond their expectations that this woman would actually challenge their master to a game. Humiliation was perhaps the only thing that awaited her at the end. When they looked at the crisscrossing lines on the board clearly, they looked at each other and wondered, what is that? Was there such a chessboard? Di Fui's eyes also fell on the chessboard, and his heart was fretting. The chessboard was not an ordinary chessboard. In fact, the lines were like spiderwebs, which made people feel a little dizzy when looking at the board. The man took a look at the two groups of chess pieces. There were black pieces that shone like a meteorite, as well as white ones that were like clumps of snow. Both sets of chess pieces were dazzling like the stars. This chessboard is quite special. Let's play a few rounds. However, please note that this is my first time playing this type of chess. You have to tell me the rules. Di Fui was quite interested in it. Sure. Gu Shijio began to explain to him the critical details of the game and what he needed to note. Upon hearing the details, it was easy to conclude that this kind of chess was very complicated and cumbersome. The little fairies who were waiting to serve their master were confused when they listened to the explanation. Meanwhile, Di Fui remembered the critical elements after listening to it once and grabbed hold of the white chess pieces once Gu Shijio was done. Let's get started. Gu Ziji smiled and held the black chess pieces. Come on. The boat was driving speedily in the dark sky. They were now marching into the Devil Kingdom, and a light gray magical spirit floated around the ship as if trying to catch the people on board. However, before they could come near, they seemed to meet some kind of resistance and scattered away. The little fairies thought that they would inevitably encounter some magical spirits when they entered the devil world, so they had brought herbs to protect themselves. Nevertheless, they did not expect the spirits to flee so easily. Obviously, this ship was set up with a wizardry barrier that dispelled any spirits. However, in the past, they also followed Di Fui into the Devil Kingdom, and there was no such wizardry barrier protecting the ship at that time. Without the need to ask, the crew could tell at once that the ordinary-looking woman set the invisible wizardry barrier on the boat. Thus, their eyes quietly aimed in her direction again. Chapter 2879. I would risk my life for you after that incident. They no longer despised the ordinary-looking woman on board with them. In fact, prior to the wizardry barrier that she set up, the crew already knew that the woman was talented because of the way she played chess. Apparently, she had brutally beaten Di Fui in the 2 games that they played. Some of these fairy kids were also masters in chess, so they knew when someone was gifted. They originally wanted to learn the game from afar, but after they watched a few moves from the pair, they felt as though their heads somehow swelled and their eyes were dizzy. Some of them even lost their balance once they moved their eyes away from the board. After trying to figure out the game several times, they did not dare to look at it anymore. Their gazes were only locked on their master, and the woman sat opposite him. When Di Fui started playing the game, he did not seem to take it very seriously. However, after 2 moves, his face turned serious, and he seemed to think very carefully before every move. Nevertheless, he was still thoroughly defeated at the end. Di Fui did not give up and wanted to play another game. Gu Shijio agreed and even teased the man, "If you feel uncomfortable, don't force yourself." Di Fui nodded. All right. Therefore, the 2 of them got down to the second game. This time the game lasted even longer than before, but in the end, Di Fui was still defeated. The main difference was that he lost fewer chess pieces than in the previous game. The man could not help but sigh. I have never lost a game of chess, and today I actually lost 2 games. to which Gu Shijio replied, "You have already exceeded my expectations." She taught Fan Qianshi about this game before. At that time, she needed to repeat the rules 5 times before Fan Qianshi could even remember it. When they played their first game, he felt dizzy halfway through and needed assistance from Gu Shijio to get rid of his headache. Nevertheless, the end result was as expected. Fan Qianshi lost terribly and even slept for 2 days straight right after the game. Although Fan Qianshi's second attempt was better, the man could barely finish the game. He made plenty of careless mistakes and lost many unnecessary pieces. Overall, it was quite a miserable game for him. To date, Gu Shijio and Fan Qianshi had already played this type of chess hundreds of times. Although he did not lose so severely of late, he still needed to sleep for at least a day to restore his energy. Therefore, watching Di Fui play 2 games consecutively and still not look tired was already amazing. In fact, he actually looked more energetic than before. Certainly, this came as a big surprise to Gu Shijio. She thought about something and asked, "Have you ever played this kind of chess before?" Di Fui shook his head. No. If he had played such an exciting game before, he would definitely study it thoroughly and would not be so severely defeated like he was today. The man still wanted to play and asked Gu Shijio to play another game with him. Gu Shijio looked at him for a moment and then smiled. "Well, I will accompany you today." So the two of them ended up playing chess for the entire journey. When Di Hao reached this scene, he could not help but sigh. He knew that the chess that his mother taught his father to play was the starry game that he saw in a vision. It seemed that in his mother's subconscious, she still thought that Di Fui was the best candidate for the role. Even if he was not her disciple, she wanted to teach him something. Di Hao's eyes then went to his mother's face, and he shook his head gently. As a man from the future and the next master of the heavenly law, he naturally knew some of the rules. Di Hao knew that the world needed a god of creation as well as a master of the heavenly law. The god of creation managed the growth of the 6 worlds and ensured that they would thrive. However, the rules of the world would have to be governed independently by another party. The master of the heavenly law managed the rules, set rules for the 6 realms to enable the world to function. Chapter 2880. I would risk my life for you, too. The god of creation and the master of the heavenly law were needed to complement each other. It was apparent that the Di Fui of that generation was the master of the heavenly law. All his actions proved that he would sooner or later awake to be the master of heavenly the law and not take over the seat of the god of creation. When the god of creation descended, there would inevitably be a new replacement, and Fan Qianshi should be the successor. Di Hao closed his eyes and thought about something deeply. He recalled something from his past in his mind. It was related to the ancient legends about the god of creation and the master of heavenly law. It was said that in ancient times, at the beginning of the world, the 6 realms had not yet taken shape, and several gods created everything in the world. When there were many sentient beings in the world, natural disputes were continually ongoing. At the time, the master of the heavenly law was born to formulate rules that governed the lives of all beings, including those in the heavens and the earth. He became the strongest among the gods. In the beginning, the changes were fierce. Natural disasters and man-made disasters ensued. Many gods experienced different catastrophes and became immortalized and slowly disappeared. Nevertheless, the relationship between the master of the heavenly law and the different gods of creation was excellent. They were all friends. 3 million years ago, there was a great catastrophe, and the remaining 8 gods of creation defended the world. Among them, 7 were immortalized. Before they disappeared, they entrusted the youngest among them to the master of the heavenly law. That lady must be Gu Shijio, while the master of heavenly law was Di Fui. When Di Fui was taking care of Gu Shijio, he gradually became affectionate to her, but he did not know that the gods of creation refrained from having emotional attachments to people. In fact, before they entrusted her to him, they took away her romantic feelings to make her unable to feel love. Therefore, she could respond to him and treated Di Fui only as a brother. 1,000,000 years ago, another catastrophe hit, and it was Gu Zijia's turn to be immortalized. However, Di Fui went against the law and forcibly replaced her during the catastrophe. He managed to seal the source of energy that could destroy the world but was exhausted to death from the process. On the other hand, Gu Shijie was severely injured and needed to hibernate for 10,000 years. When she woke up, she only remembered that she was the god of creation and would soon be in the process of immortalizing. Her subconscious asked her to find the next successor, and then she found Fan Qianshi and met again with the reincarnation of Di Fui. Di Hao continued to watch the scenes between Gu Shijie and Di Fui with the tracing spell and sighed softly. Her mother has a being without romantic feelings while his father had fallen for her in his previous life. In the end, she only saw him as a friend. To add to Di Fui's misery, Gu Shijie was aware that she would soon be immortalized. During this time, it was unlikely that she would fall for anyone. Poor father. Di Hao was right about his predictions. The god of creation only treated Di Fui as a companion. During the few days they spent together in the Devil Kingdom, she played along with their plan and followed Di Fui's instructions to put on a public display of affection. She even held his hand when they want to visit the Devil King, but when no one was around, she would be cold and formal, not allowing Di Fui to be too close to her. Di Fui was a brilliant person. He had a clear strategy in his mind and was not impatient. Therefore, whenever she was cold to him, he just smiled and did not care too much about it. Needless to say, Di Fui's arrival caused an uproar in the Devil Kingdom, and the entire party belonging to the regent became nervous. Chapter 2881. I would risk my life for you. 3. The regent feared that Di Fui and the Devil King would jointly plot against him. Therefore, after Di Fui entered into the Devil Kingdom, he sent countless masters to have him assassinated, but each of them was unsuccessful. Not only did they fail to kill Di Fui, but the killers also did not even return. Nevertheless, the regent did not dare to send the army to intercept him blatantly. After all, Di Fui's reputation was too good around the 6 realms. He literally had friends across the globe. Even the rulers in the human and monster kingdom were his good friends. If he openly killed Di Fui, he would only be attacked by the other realms. Even without reference to the other realms, the prestige that Di Fui carried in the Devil Kingdom itself was already quite high. The people here admired him very much. Therefore, if the regent sent a large army to kill him, he would grow even more unpopular and might cause the people to rebel. So, the only way to go about it was to do it stealthily or not do it at all. Since the several waves of assassinations had failed, the regent changed his mind and cancelled his plan to remove Di Fui from the equation. In the end, he only spied on him to see who he would contact after he entered the Devil Kingdom. As Di Fui entered into his territory so publicly, it was only normal for the regent to hold a ceremony to welcome him. No matter how much the regent was afraid of him, he still needed to lead his people to at least come and greet him. The greeting ceremony was quite grand. Many magic flowers filled the place while water was scattered on the street as the people on both sides of the road were pouring out to join in the excitement. When Gu Shijie entered the city, what she saw was the lively scenes on the street. Meanwhile, the regent led the civil and military officials to meet with Di Fui and his crew from the boat. He spoke cheerfully, "It is our honor to have National Master Di to come to our Devil Kingdom. It is indeed a glorious occasion. May I know the purpose of your visit?" Di Fui leisurely smiled and replied, 2 months ago, the Devil King invited me to visit this place. Is he doing well?" The regent was suspicious of Di Fui's remark, but he did not show on his face. He said that the Devil King was not feeling well recently, so he could not come to greet Di Fui personally. After they chatted a while, his eyes then fell on Gu Shijie. He saw that Di Fui had been holding her hand, so he asked, "Who is she?" Di Fui answered with 2 words, "My fiancée." A single stone seemed to have stirred up 1,000 waves as his 2 words created noise in the whole Devil Kingdom. Many eyes instantly fell on Gu Shijie. There were some envious and jealous of her and others that even despised her. Gu Shijie did not pay attention to them as she lazily yawned and said, "Fui, I am sleepy." She had been playing chess for a whole day with Di Fui. She was now exhausted. Di Fui immediately took her arm and let her lean on his body. "All right, I will take you to rest." He looked at the regent as if awaiting some direction. The regent quickly said, "The new hostel has been cleaned up for you. National Master D, please." They were now inside the hostel. After Gu Shijio followed Di Fui into the bedroom, she immediately stood straight and pulled her arm out from his grasp. "We no longer need to act. Anyway, you can go and get busy with your own matters now." Di Fui looked at his empty arm and smiled. "Why are you so sleepy? We only played a few games of chess. I want to take you to the streets. In fact, there are a lot of fun things in the Devil Kingdom." Gu Shijio sat on the bed and replied leisurely, "We have done enough acting for today. There is no need to go out anymore. Actually, I am somewhat curious, why do we need to act this way in the Devil Kingdom?" Di Fui answered, "Do you want to bring me back to the Tianyin Valley and announce our marriage? Do you think that your apprentice will believe it? He would probably guess that you are just acting just to make him give up on you. Besides, he has many spies in the Devil Kingdom, so our actions here will surely reach his ears soon. It would be more believable this way." Chapter 2882, I would risk my life for you, for, in that case, do you need me to restore my appearance? Otherwise, others will not know that I am your fiancé. Let's wait for a few more days, it is not the right time now. Di Fui did not want her to feel as though he was using her reputation to win him favors in the devil world. He wanted to rely on his own abilities to achieve his goal. Naturally, Gu Shijio did not know what he was thinking about in his heart, but she understood that he must have his own reasons for doing so, so she did not insist on anything. "Okay, I will listen to you." She waved to him again and said, "I am sleepy. Little Fui, you can go and do your own things now." Di Fui was stunned by her statement. "Can you take away the word little?" Gu Shijio was too sleepy and could barely open her eyes. "You are really much younger than me. Even if I am younger than you, you cannot address me this way." "I will address you as Fui then. By the way, you are not allowed to address me as baby either." Every time he called her baby, it always gave her goosebumps. Read latest chapters at List Novel. Di Fui walked out with a smile and left her with only one sentence, "I will try to." Noise from outside the room awakened Gu Shijio. "What's wrong?" She got out from under the cloak and opened the door. She was shocked by the big crowd of people assembled outside the hostel. It was a large group of women. Gu Shijio roughly estimated that there should be almost 100 people. These women were all dressed in a bright green uniform. When they arranged themselves together, they looked like overlapping leaves. These women were carrying a red sedan chair, and from where Gu Shijio was standing, the sedan chair was a little red mark in the clump of green, which was particularly contrasting to the eye. The curtain of the sedan was hanging down, and it was clear that the owner had not come out yet. When Gu Shijio opened the door, she heard someone said, "Well, she has come out. She has come out. Princess, she has emerged. She is so arrogant for making our princess wait here for so long." "Exactly. What is so great about her? Just because National Master D pampers her, she thinks it justifies her being so arrogant." There were lots of gossips about Gu Shijio coming from outside. Gu Shijio ignored the noise and turned to look at the servant outside the door. The servants quickly reported the incident to her. It turned out that she was the princess who came was the youngest daughter of the regent. Before Di Fui left, he ordered the servant to make sure that no one was allowed to disturb her. Therefore, when the princess arrived, the servant kept the door shut and refused to inform Gu Shijio about her visit. This matter had caused a small dispute. Gu Shijio heard of this young princess before. She knew that the regent had 2 daughters and a son. The eldest daughter was Meng Liuxiang, who was sealed away by Yin Jusi at the peak. And the second daughter was the one who arrived today. It was said that her skills were decent, but her most prominent feature was her appearance. She was known as the most beautiful person in the devil world. Many people went to the regent to ask if they could propose to her even when she was still growing up. Ironically, she was more popular than her skilled sister. Since this princess was always the center of attention, she had grown to be very proud. She would not even concern herself with a commoner. The only person she wanted to marry was the most handsome man in the 6 realms. Gu Shijio was somewhat puzzled as to why this beauty would come to visit her. Did she come for the wrong person? She then turned to ask the servant, "Does she want to see me? Or is she here for your master?" Before the servant answered, there was a crisp voice that sounded like a bell that could be heard. "I want to see this girl." Chapter 2883. Being ignored, the princess, two servants raised their hand and threw out a red carpet for their master. The red carpet rolled all the way to the front of the hostel's main door. Then, one of the maids lifted the curtains open, and a woman came out and landed on the red carpet. Gu Zijia's gaze turned to the woman, and she whispered in her heart, "She is beautiful." The woman was wearing a red cotton yarn long skirt. The long dress was swept the red carpet like a rolling red wave as she walked on it. Her facial features were exquisite, and there was a kind of enchanting beauty in her eyes that was perfectly positioned below her eyebrows. Every move she made seemed to reveal a sort of charm that captivated those around her. She stood on the carpet with countless maids behind her. Even though she did not speak, she had an immense aura around her that made everyone feel tensed. As she looked around, her eyes were like a searchlight, sizing Gu Shijio up from head to toe. She finally asked, "Who are you?" Gu Shijio ignored her and turned to tell the servant something. "Don't allow this random person to come in. Please send the guest back to where she came from." Then she turned, went back into the house, and closed the door. The princess did not expect that Gu Shijio would have no interest in talking to her. In fact, she was furious that someone would treat her so disrespectfully. "What do you mean? What do you mean by random person?" Princess, please step back." The servant interrupted. The princess had strutted over so grandiosely, so she naturally did not want to go back so awkwardly. She looked at her servant, and the servant immediately understood her intention. The maid went over and challenged Di Fuya's servant. What did she mean? Our princess is so honored, and she is here personally to visit Gu Shijio. Are you going to greet her with this kind of attitude? If she is here to visit, she should know who she is visiting, right? The servant left by Di Fui was excellent at criticizing people. The princess' face turned green. No one had ever criticized her since she was a kid. Therefore, she left her graciousness aside and continued, if she was not brought here by the national master, who would even want to visit her? I just want to see who she is. I never expected her to be such an ordinary woman. She does not even look any better than my maid. I don't understand why the national master likes her. Perhaps she has used black magic on him? These words were rather crude, so Di Fuya's servant frowned. When she was about to drive her out, a cold voice sounded from a distance, "Who has used black magic on me?" The princess' facial expression changed immediately. She turned over and saw that Di Fui had returned with his followers. In an attempt to dissolve the awkwardness of the situation, the princess forced a smile on her face and said, "National Master Di has come back at the right timing. I am just coming to visit the girl that you brought, but I didn't expect her to be so arrogant." "I don't quite understand." Di Fuya's eyes swept past her and toward the servant at the door. He asked coldly, "I thought I had given you a clear order before I left. No one is allowed to disturb her. Did you not listen to me?" The servant was scared and immediately kneeled. "I am sorry." The princess brought her people and came in forcibly. I could not stop her. After all, they were in the Devil Kingdom. When the daughter of the man with the highest authority in the area wanted to enter, there was nothing much that could be done to stop her. Moreover, she brought so many people along, so the four of them could not possibly have stopped them anyway. At this point, there were a lot of idlers inside and outside the hostel. When the princess came over so poshly, it naturally attracted a lot of people's attention. Many people came hoping to see a show. However, it seemed that the princess was utterly neglected. Although she felt hurt, she did not want to offend Di Fui at this juncture, but she did not want to leave too. So, she just stood there and remained silent. Chapter 2884. Being Ignored, 2. In fact, the princess wanted to see for herself to what extent they would ignore her. Di Fui was adamant not to give her any attention. He went straight into the accommodation and knocked on Gu Zijia's door. "Ah Jio, Do you want to accompany me for a walk? The door opened, and Gu Zijia's silhouette could be seen. She answered lazily, Where are you going? Di Fui pulled her out and held her waist. It's not good for you to stay in the house all day. Let's go. I saw a few fun places that we can visit together. When Gu Shijio was held around the waist by Di Fui, her body was slightly stiff, and she subconsciously wanted to push him away. However, Di Fui sent her a directed audio in time. Cooperate with me. Thus, Gu Shijio held his arm as naturally as she could. Is there any delicious food for me to try? She was now more interested in eating. Of course. I heard about the braised lion's head in the devil world and their golden pheasant's sea bream. Their meatballs stuffed with wine are good too, right? Gu Shijio gave a few suggestions. Well, I will take you to eat them then. The two people spoke to each other and left by themselves. They did not even look at the princess at all. Needless to say, she was speechless. It felt like a slap on the face for her. She wanted to vent her frustration. At this time, many pairs of eyes fell on her as if she was a joke to them. In utter frustration, she yelled, Who is she? Di Fui and Gu Shijio naturally ignored her. Meanwhile, the servant who stayed behind helped to answer. She is the fiancée of our national master. They are going to get married in a few days. The princess merely remained silent. Gu Shijio thought that Di Fui was just putting on a show earlier. In fact, she did not expect him to really bring her to look for an authentic braised lion head restaurant. The delicious food in any area would always be located in the midst of the local community. Although all the famous dishes of the devil world were available in most restaurants, the taste was not particularly good when compared to the ones located in taverns scattered around small alleys. When Di Fui brought her here, Gu Shijio thought that this was his secret den. Once the dishes were served, she tasted a few mouthfuls and praised, It tastes delicious. It is the best that I've had. How did you find this place? Her brows arched while she ate the delicious food. Meanwhile, Di Fui smiled and replied, I knew that you would like it, so I had researched in advance before bringing you here. In advance? I didn't tell you in advance. I just mentioned about food in the hostel earlier, and you brought me here right away. When would you have had time to research in advance? Silly. You mentioned it in the glacier. Did she mention anything to do with food at that time? Gu Shijio actually thought about it for a moment but could not recall anything. Her memory was amazing, so she should have been able to recall it if they did talk about it. Di Fui seemed to know what she was thinking about and quickly added, You mentioned it in your dreams. You had blurted out some of your preferences. Gu Shijio remained silent. She might have said it while she was dreaming. That would explain why she would have no memory of it. Nevertheless, that made her feel rather uncomfortable as it was somewhat awkward for the creator of the universe to talk about food in her dreams. It was very detrimental to her image. You have done many embarrassing things in front of me that have ruined your image, so you don't have to care about this one. You don't need to feel embarrassed. Gu Shijio clenched her fist as she could not deny it. Based on the embarrassing things she had done in front of the man, there was no way she could go any lower. Therefore, Gu Shijio decided to let loose and started to eat and drink more freely. She even reached out her open palm to him and asked, Do you have any good wine on you? Give me a bottle. You can't drink right now. Let's wait a few more days. Chapter 2885, Being Ignored, 3. Why can't I drink during these few days? You have a bad after-wine attitude, and we have to sleep in the same room. I am afraid that you might molest me if you get drunk. Gu Shijio was speechless. What a douche. She would not be so unethical. However, she could not completely deny his statement as she did get drunk and lose control lately. She did not have much confidence in her ability to hold her liquor right now. Perhaps, when all was done, she would come back and look for a restaurant where no one knew her and drink her heart out. Even though she could not drink, Gu Shijio was not about to waste the opportunity to feast on the good food in the Devil Kingdom. In fact, she ate so much to the point where her stomach was slightly bloated. Thus, Di Fui brought her for a stroll on the street. As expected, Di Fui was well known by the people here. Anything he did would naturally attract the attention of a crowd, but right now, he was even patiently taking care of a woman. When the two of them walked together, they could already hear whispers coming from every corner of the place. Some curious comics even had the audacity to tail them. "Agio, how do you feel?" Di Fui asked her. I feel that I'm attracting a lot of hatred." Gu Shijio continued, "Your ability to attract women is definitely very powerful. I can sense that many women here want to kill me. Did you deliberately bring me here to attract their attention? Are you jealous of the other women? Young man, you have overthought. I just think it's dangerous to be your date, especially when so many people are clearly after you. Didn't you notice the princess' reaction? When you left with me, she stared at me as if she wanted to swallow me up." In fact, Gu Shijio could subconsciously feel a chill at her back. Di Fui gave her a rather confused look. "You are the great deity. Are you afraid of her?" Of course, Gu Shijio did not care about her. She just thought that it was unnecessary trouble. Di Fui coldly continued, "I am acting as your fake husband. In fact, it is also very risky. Can you imagine once your precious apprentice figures out about our relationship? I'm afraid he might have the intention to rip out my heart." Speaking of which, Gu Shijio felt somewhat guilty when she was reminded of the price Di Fui had to pay to play along with her request. She cleared her throat and replied, "I didn't look for you at first. I wanted to let Injusi do it, but Injusi's ability is suited as the future king of the devil world. His ability is limited. If your apprentice decides to take him down, do you think he can escape?" Gu Shijio remained silent. She had actually considered this before and even thought about a backup plan. She knew was that Fan Qianshi would not dare to harm Injusi while she was still alive. So, just when she was going to immortalize, she would explain the truth to Fan Qianshi before she dissipated, and then force Fan Qianshi to swear that he would not do something unfavorable to Injusi. The promise would be binding, so it was very unlikely that he would go against it. Besides, once Fan Qianshi knew the truth, he should know that it was not Injusi's fault. At this point, he would not risk his life to go against a binding covenant. Nevertheless, she could not tell Di Fui about her plan. But she was actually curious about one thing. Did you volunteer yourself for this task so that Injusi would be protected? Di Fui choked for a moment. Then he looked at her and smiled. "Do you really think so?" Gu Shijio sighed. "You don't even want to be my apprentice and have continuously asked me to set you free. Doesn't that mean that you don't want to have any relationship with me? However, this time, you suddenly took on this troublesome task and have even played along with everything. I can't think of the reason why you would endeavor to do so." Di Fui silently stared at her for a moment. She was looking at him too, and at that moment he realized that her eyes were bright and calm. Apparently she really thought so. He decided to respond half-jokingly, "Maybe I really like you and don't want to be your apprentice. Perhaps, I only want to be your husband?" Gu Shijio was stunned and subconsciously stared at him. "Are you serious?" "I said maybe, so it may be true." Chapter 2886, Being Ignored, 4. If that is the case, our arrangement will end here. I don't want to be involved in any relationships. There is no need to act anymore. Gu Zijia's pretty face turned cold and serious very quickly. Di Fui's eyes deepened as he leisurely replied, "You made the right assumption earlier. Injusi is a leader that is rare to find. I don't want him to be sacrificed due to this matter. Therefore I should take his place. Besides, I am not afraid of your apprentice wanting to seek revenge." Although he sounded a bit arrogant, Gu Shijio was partially relieved. Nevertheless, there was still a feeling of discomfort in her heart, but she tried to ignore it. During the night in a guest house located at the suburb of the Devil World, Fan Qianshi sat on a chair with Yin Mingzhu standing in front of him. She was the daughter of the Devil King. Yin Mingzhu reported to him on Di Fui's whereabouts. His presence in the Devil Kingdom gave her a glimmer of hope. National Master Di did not contact anyone since he arrived in the Devil World, but I saw him meeting Father several times. Do you think he is trying to assist my father in regaining his power from the regent? Fan Qianshi did not want to comment but asked, What did he talk to your father about? Did your father reveal anything to you? Yin Mingzhu shook her head. My father met him privately. None of the servants from either side was allowed to join the conversation, so I have no clue what they talked about. You didn't ask? I did. My father said that Di Fui only talked to him about the customs here in the Devil Kingdom and did not say anything else. Fan Qianshi laughed. Di Fui has always been a far-sighted person. Do you think he will dismiss all his servants just to chat with your father freely? How can you believe this? Yin Ming's pretty face turned a bit red. My father has never belittled me and will not lie to me. The Devil King was a talkative person. He could not keep a secret in his heart, and he always liked talking to his daughter. Therefore, there were few, if any, secrets between them. If some form of an agreement had been reached between the two parties, she was sure that her father would tell her. Fan Qianshi, on the other hand, found her to be quite ridiculous. You're so childish. Your father is the king of a country, after all. He will always consider his kingdom and community first. Once there are matters involving the devil world, it is likely that he will not reveal everything to you. You'd better go back and ask him again about what they have discussed. All right. However, it is my personal belief that Di Fui really wants to help my father. Fan Qianshi sneered. Di Fui will only assist influential people around the world. Do you think he will help someone like your father? Yin Mingzhu was stunned and rather dissatisfied by his reply. What is wrong with my father? His main problem is the regent that stands in his way. Once he gets back his power, he will be a good ruler. Don't you want to help my father? Why? Fan Qianshi realized that he had crossed a line, so he gently replied, I understand what you are saying. However, Di Fui may not understand. I am afraid that he may not be truthful to your father. Maybe he is partnering with the regent to take complete control over the kingdom. When you go back, look for your father and keep him away from Di Fui. Rest assured, since I promised to assist your father, I will not renege. I am the disciple of the God of creation, and I will help you to protect your father. No one would dare to challenge me. I will definitely be loyal to your father. Chapter 2887. The plot. Yin Mingzhu sighed with relief. She still believed that she could rely on Fan Qianshi. When will you come forward to help my father to regain his power? I feel so annoyed every time I see the arrogant regent and his daughters. They are not even real princesses but are pampered by everyone as though they are. It is too disgusting. Rest assured, it is not the right timing yet. I have made my arrangements. Once the time is right, I will come out and sort this matter out once and for all. It should not take too long to get this settled. Yin Mingzhu smiled after she got his assurance. Her eyes flashed with delight and she replied, Qianshi, I always knew that you would help me. It's good to be your acquaintance. Fan Qianshi smiled and raised his hand to touch her hair. Silly girl. Although I don't like you romantically, I really treat you as a friend, and perhaps, even as my sister. If you are wronged, I will help you. Yin Mingzhu bit her lips, nodded, turned, and was about to go. But Fan Qianshi suddenly asked another question. Is the woman around Di Fui still following him around all day? To which Yin Mingzhu replied, they are a really loving couple. I heard that their wedding date is approaching. Whenever Di Fui is not in the palace to see my father, he will stay by her side all day and night. They hang out during the day and even sleep together at night. I guess they must have shared an intimate moment already. Strangely, the woman looks rather ordinary. I did not expect her to have such good fortune to catch the eyes of Di Fui. You don't know how much that bitch Meng Luqing is angry because of this matter. She can't wait to rip the body of the woman named Jiao apart. Meng Luqing was the youngest daughter of the regent, the young princess. Yin Mingzhu did not like her for quite some time now. Hence, she could not hold herself back from uttering a few more harsh remarks. Meng Luqing always considered herself to be very pretty and only wants to marry the most handsome man in all of the 6 realms. When Di Fui arrived, she immediately fell in love with him and wanted to marry him. She frequently found reasons to approach him, but Di Fui did not have any feelings toward her. He even ignored her and embarrassed her in public. It was pleasing to see that. Fan Qianshi shook his head slightly. He did not believe that Di Fui would really fall in love with an ordinary woman. Perhaps he was only using her to act as a shield against other women. Nevertheless, Di Fui had always kept a distance from other women. If he only treated her as a shield, would he actually sleep with her? This contradiction really made it seem that Di Fui was falling in love with that woman. Fan Qianshi shook his head to dismiss any thought of that man. Besides, if Di Fui really fell in love with a woman named Audiobook, it did not really matter to him. At the very least, he has removed one rival to win his beloved's heart. Although he did not know the reason, Fan Qianshi somehow always had the feeling that Di Fui was not only a rival to him in terms of his career but also in terms of finding a relationship. Seeing that the man had found himself a lover, he felt rather relieved. Perhaps he should even intervene to help them get closer. All of a sudden, he turned his palms over and poured a bottle of light liquid in his palm. He sniffed it slightly and pursed his lips. Then he thought about the fact that Di Fui had slept with another woman. The two people, whether indeed in love or not, had slept together. His master was obsessed with cleanliness, so if Di Fui had slept with another woman, Gu Shijiao would no longer be willing to have a relationship with him. Even if Di Fui became the ruler of the 6 realms, it would not make a difference. He clapped his hands together, and blue smoke appeared and landed on the ground. The smoke swiftly clumped together and turned into a child that bowed to him. Fan Qianshi handed the bottle to the child and whispered a few words to it. Then, the child snorted and turned away. Later, Fan Qianshi looked in the direction in which the child disappeared, wiped his hands, and smiled. Chapter 2888. The Plot. 2. Fan Qianshi recently developed the drug. It was colorless, tasteless, odorless, and easily integrated into water. No one could smell it or taste it, but if someone consumed the drug, they would easily become wild like an animal and have an unprecedented thirst for sex. However, it only worked on men. As for the boy, it was a unique creature adopted by Fan Qianshi while he roamed around the 6 realms. It was not a fairy or a demon but could change its appearance at will. It could easily transform itself into a dragon or a tiger if it wanted to as well. Its appearance would be indistinguishable. This time, he instructed the creature to transform into one of Di Fui's servants that he had brought along with him to the Devil Kingdom. Of course, to play things safe, it did not disguise itself into the servant boy that Di Fui kept beside him, but instead, the servant who did some of the menial chores. When Fan Qianshi managed to capture this being, he was keen to study its unique form and perhaps even experiment on it, but he did not expect it to end up being so loyal to him. In fact, it would do anything he asked it to do. Since then, Fan Qianshi took the opportunity to make it a spy for him. Any time that the man wanted to learn more about a person, he would send this creature to spy on matters from the inside. Over the years, it had never blown its cover, so it had won Fan Qianshi's trust. He truly believed that this time would not be an exception. Therefore, the task would be completed. Back in the Devil Kingdom, the regent was storming around furiously. The Devil King, who had always been a soft and spineless man, had suddenly stopped listening to his instructions. He rejected his decision in court and even got some ministers to back him so publicly. The regent's authority was faltering, so he was clearly infuriated. To vent his frustration, he argued with the Demon King in the Golden Hall. Under the influence of his anger, he was almost driven to use his magical blade to stab the king. Fortunately, he was stopped by one of the courtiers just before he did anything silly. The regent decided to leave at once but was still angry when he returned to the palace. The king must have support from Di Fui. Otherwise, he will not dare to oppose you in court. These days, Di Fui has come in and out of the palace to talk to the king. They must be discussing a plot against the regent. My regent, the king has already been dissatisfied with you from the start. Now that he has the support from Di Fui, I am afraid that he will be unfavorable to you in the future. Therefore, you must also make plans early. In a secret hall of the regent's palace, a group of courtiers loyal to the regent was discussing their next steps. All of them looked worried. Meanwhile, the regent's face was black. He kept silent, but his eyes were murderous. Do you think that Di Fui will really support His Majesty? I heard that Di Fui will only support people who had value and status. Nevertheless, the Devil King did not seem to have either. Some people questioned. We should also look to see if the Yin family has any talent that could potentially rule the Devil Kingdom. The Devil King has only one son and one daughter. His son is only 3 years old. He is too young and probably does not understand anything yet. On the other hand, there is nothing special about the princess. As for the Devil King's brother, Injusi, he is also a useless man. He cannot be entrusted with any important matters. So overall, if Di Fui wants to make a mark in the devil world, who else can he assist? There's only the Devil King. It is weird. Our regent is so intelligent and has the ability to rule the kingdom. Why didn't Di Fui want to assist him? Someone felt that it was rather unfair for the regent that Di Fui did not consider supporting him. What is so strange about it? Di Fui wants to be the king of the 6 realms. He will only support a person who he can control. Our regent is truly a person that holds power and doesn't need to be assisted. He naturally understands this, so he will not support our regent and has to come up with other schemes to take over the kingdom. Chapter 2889. The Plot. 3. The regent's close men regarded everyone as a critical part of the team. Therefore, their discussions with one another were open and transparent. Little did they know that Gu Shijio sat on a chair in the corner of the hall and quietly observed as these officials openly expressed their own opinions. She had quietly sneaked into the hall by using the invisibility spell so that no one would notice her presence. Basically, she could stay and listen on for as long as she liked. The regent's men brought up many of their concerns, thus intensifying the discussion. Nevertheless, eventually, all of them realized that instead of helplessly waiting for death to come, they should make a plot now to abolish the Devil King and crown a new ruler. The regent of the Devil Kingdom had long thought about the possibility, so he agreed to the plan immediately. However, he still had some concerns. The Devil King has been the ruler for a long time now. He knows how it feels like to be powerful and ultimately superior, so why should he leave his title so easily? I am afraid that it will only drive him into a desperate attempt to work together with Di Fui. I'm not worried about myself. Your safety is my concern. Everyone here has worked a lot for the future of the Devil Kingdom. If the king found out about the plan, all of you here would be as good as dead. The Devil King is a man of fatuousness, so I believe this is the sort of thing he would do. He would be driven to desperately offer Di Fui anything to maintain his power. In my opinion, we should fix this once and for all. The military officer then made a gesture implying that they should take the Devil King's life. Everyone else chimed in, and by the end, it was clear that these people were not men of virtue. They had sacrificed a great deal to be where they currently were and did not plan to simply leave their position for nothing. Soon, they came up with a plan on how to murder the Devil King. By right, the Devil King's son would be the next in line to the throne and would get the regent's support. Truthfully, they did not care if the child had the capability to be a king. What they needed was a puppet, and a child was the easiest to be controlled. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh at their plans. However, things were only going the way that Di Fui had wanted. He made use of another party to get rid of the person standing in his way. So far, Di Fui had only visited the Devil King 3 times, and yet the regent was already so uneasy about it, to the point where he almost publicly murdered the king. It would seem that Injusi's biggest obstacle had just been taken care of. What a great plan, she thought. Then, Gu Shijio squeezed the voice recording amulet in her hand and let out a sarcastic smile. The entire conversation between these men was recorded, which would become the strongest evidence of their vicious crime. Gu Shijio managed to contribute a small part to Di Fui's plan even without showing her power or authority. The evidence would be her token of appreciation for his kindness. Later, she took a look around the hall and realized that the place was heavily guarded. Without her teleportation and invisibility, she would never have made it through unnoticed. These officials must have thought that the place was safe, so they held nothing back, thus giving Gu Shijio a chance to record their dirty conversations. Now that she had what she came for, she refused to stay any longer. With a quick snap, she left the place. No one knew she had been there at all, and their discussions went on about things that she did not mind missing out on. When Gu Shijio returned, it was already noon. When she walked into the room and saw Di Fui by the table, indulging in some exquisite delicacies, Gu Shijio took a quick look and realized that every dish was her favorite. As soon as she entered the room, Di Fui seemed relieved. "Where have you been?" "I took a walk. Is there any nice wine?" she delightfully asked with a smile. Di Fui was glad to see her so happy. He did not mind putting in the effort to see her smile. Her presence had lifted his mood in an instant. Finally, he offered her a bottle of good wine. "Yes, have this one." Then, he poured out a glass of wine for her. It had been days since she last tasted some wine, so she became immediately hooked with the delicious scent. With a quick gulp, she downed a mouthful of wine. Chapter 2890. Getting drunk. It had been days since she last tasted some wine, so she became immediately hooked to the delicious scent. With a quick gulp, she downed another mouthful of wine. The taste still lingered on the tip of her tongue as she spoke. "It tastes quite mild." It seemed she actually preferred a stronger wine. "Then this is the wine for you. The aftertaste is very strong," Di Fui smilingly answered as he passed her another bottle. They sat across the table and started drinking delightfully. Gu Shijio had never thought that they could live in peace with one another someday. His attitude of late had become less provoking. There was less arguing and more caring for one another. In fact, whenever he had the time, he would even take her out for a walk around the Devil Kingdom. He reasoned that they needed to show their affection publicly to make it more convincing. Contrary to what she expected, Gu Shijio actually found those days quite enjoyable. Sometimes she wished that it would never end. Besides enjoying good food and walks around the Devil Kingdom, Gu Shijio was also collecting spiritual stones around the place. Passerbys would typically only admire the clarity of the stones. However, Gu Shijio was perhaps one of the few people who knew that the stones were essential elements that provided spiritual energy to the heavens and earth. Furthermore, these stones were the sole element required on a star formation. Soon, she would have to teach Fan Chencher the real technique to build a proper and stable formation. In order to fully understand the technique of a star formation, he had to put his heart at ease without the slightest distraction. Otherwise, the entire endeavor would fail. Over the past few days, Di Fui was quite occupied with his own schedule. So whenever he was busy, Gu Shijio would head out to collect the spiritual stones on her own. It was a rather exhausting process, so she could only collect 30 pieces at a time. Nevertheless, she estimated that she only needed a total of 360 pieces, so there was no rush. They had been in the Devil Kingdom for almost a fortnight now, and those were fruitful days. For the first time, she actually felt contented and fulfilled. Di Fui would make an effort to come back and have a meal with her during lunch. Sometimes, they would have the meal in their room, and other times in a restaurant. Every outing together was a great way to get more people aware of their relationship. Gu Shijio was impressed by Di Fui's professionalism in the matter. Everything that he did was done with a proper plan. She thought about all this while drinking wine with Di Fui. Getting tipsy was the best part about drinking. Satisfied, Gu Shijio could already feel the wine in her head. She then threw the voice recording amulet to him and said, "Here, a surprise for you." Di Fui switched it on and listened to everything on the tape. "Did you venture into the regent's residence all alone? His place is heavily guarded with many array formations." With a smile, Gu Shijio proudly replied, "There is nothing that can stop me from entering. There is also no place that I cannot go. Don't worry. I went in and out unnoticed. Your plan still remains intact." "I am not worried about my plan. I am worried about your safety." Gu Shijio laughed out loud. "You are being silly. You should also know that I am the Divine Lord. Do you really think that I am that fragile? Moreover, you have done a great deal for me, so I really should repay your kindness." She was right. Gu Shijio was the Divine Lord, after all. She was not like any other woman. In fact, she was even more powerful than him. He was indeed overworried. Perhaps he had seen her at her worst times, thus giving him an idea to be protective of her. He felt an intuitive need to make sure that she was safe. Her blushing cheeks seemed to have caught his attention at this time. The look in her eyes was a little blank, as she was probably tipsy. Nevertheless, Di Fui found it extremely captivating. All of a sudden, he could feel a rush of blood in his chest, so he quickly looked away. I do not need any form of repayment. All right, the wine will get a little stronger over time. You should stay here and rest. Apparently, Gu Shijio was very obedient when she was tipsy this time. Chapter 2891, Getting Drunk, 2. As she tried to get up, she accidentally brushed her head against his hand, and unfortunately, she started swaying and fell right into Di Fui's arms. For a moment, Gu Shijio lay helplessly in his embrace. She shook her head real quick before looking up and staring at him. Their eyes met, and he looked at her with an intense gaze. It was clear that he had become captivated. As they continued to stare into each other's eyes, it was as though they were looking into each other's souls. At this point, Gu Zijia's breath smelled of the wine that they had shared, coupled with a small fraction of her own sweet scent. Di Fui could feel the blood rushing through his head, reminding him of a strong urge that led to the most honest bodily reaction of a man. In an instant, he felt the need to take her to the bed. "Little Fui, you are so good-looking," Gu Shijio commented while stroking his face with both her hands. The sudden gesture dumbfounded Di Fui. Delighted, he then returned the comment with a smile and said, "You are welcome to take a few more looks. Your face will surely attract a lot of women. I wish I could put a mask on your face so that no one else gets to see it." Gu Shijio slowly traced his supple skin with her fingers. Her soft hands slowly caressed his cheek, sending tickles down his spine. Di Fui acknowledged her concern with a bright smile. "From now on, I will wear a mask in public. You are the only one who gets to see my face, all right?" "Great." Gu Shijio nodded at the suggestion. "Unnecessary attention only brings trouble." "I think so too." "All right, I have decided to wear a mask from now on and take it off only when I am home." It seemed that the high alcohol level in her body was finally taking over her head. Gu Zijia's body went weak, and she appeared to be completely learning on him now. Suddenly, he could hear her mumbling to herself, "Why is the world spinning? The ground has become so soft. Is there another catastrophe?" Surprised by her sudden remark, Di Fui knew it was time to put her to bed. "The world is not spinning. You are drunk." He carried her onto the bed and tucked her nicely into the comfortable sheets. However, she felt that it was too warm and immediately kicked the sheets away. Di Fui tried to put the sheets back on her a few times, but she kicked the sheets away just the same. The Devil Kingdom's weather was usually quite chilly, so he needed to make sure that she was warm enough. He put the sheets on for the last time and cast a spell to make her stay comfy. Finally, she stopped moving and drifted into slumber right away. After sending her to bed, Di Fui felt the need to get a refreshing drink. He poured out a cup of water and downed it in one shot. Soon he felt better. For the past couple of days, both of them have been sharing the same room but slept on different beds. He did not agree to split the beds because he was trying to behave like a gentleman. In fact, he only agreed to it because he did not want to taint her name. He was a man who sought perfection and wanted to keep the most romantic part of their relationship for their wedding night. Besides, it was not their first time sharing a room. They used to stay together in the same ice house back in the glacier, but it was nothing more than sharing a space for meditation. However, something had changed over the past couple of days. Di Fui was feeling something more for her. Sometimes, he would spend his sleepless night looking at the woman who was soundly asleep on the other bed, immersing himself in the sweet scent of hers. Watching her sleeping had sparked some excitement in his heart. Seeing how things were going now, he made a hiss and decided that he had to leave. He walked out of the room and requested for some soup to sober up. Although the aftereffect was strong, the wine was a quality one. Therefore, getting drunk from the wine would not do any harm to Gu Zijia's body. Di Fui wanted for her to rest well, so he only returned 2 hours later to check on her. Chapter 2892, Getting Drunk, 3. He entered the room with the soup, but as soon as he saw her, his heart began to thump. She was still sleeping with the sheets kicked aside. She must have countered the spell during her sleep. Perhaps she really found it too warm. In fact, she did not only kick the sheets away but had even unbuttoned her clothes, thus revealing her chest. Also, for some reason, she was no longer wearing her pants. Her long, slender legs were exposed as she slept. Di Fui had never seen anything quite as fascinating in his life. It had taken him 2 hours just to calm down earlier, but seeing her immediately made his blood boil again with lust. His throat started to itch too, as if thirsty for something more. Meanwhile, the excitement in his lower body was hard to ignore. With a deep breath, he tried to discipline himself. Throughout Di Fui's life, he had chosen to meditate at a more divine level, which required him to get rid of his emotions, be it love or lust. Therefore, the man was hardly interested in anyone, except for her. It was as though she had awakened a beast in him, which he needed to control at all times. He generally controlled himself well all this while, but this time was slightly different. The thirst in his throat had been around long enough. Watching her sleep this way had triggered a burning desire that took over his body almost instantly. He was now like a reckless adolescent who was going through puberty. Quickly, Di Fui cast a spell, summoning the sheets to cover her up again. Soon enough, there was nothing left to see. Only then did he approach her. "Shijio, have some soup for you." Deep in her sleep, Gu Shijio remained motionless. She looked beautiful with a hint of pink around both her cheeks. Her half-closed lips were rather enticing too. At this point, Di Fui felt like leaning in and kissing her. Even though she was covered in the sheets, the man was still longing for her. The look in his eyes was no longer calm like before. Tightly, he squeezed the bowl of soup in his hand. There was lust boiling wildly in his blood now. He knew that he wanted her, all of her. However, the very last bit of his senses held him back. "No, Fui," Gu Shijio suddenly murmured in her sleep. With her eyes closed, she reached out her arms to him, as if asking for a hug. Di Fui was carried away, completely, and his desire triumphed in the end. He bent down to kiss her, and their lips almost touched. All of a sudden, Gu Shijio opened her eyes and stared at him. That was when Di Fui stopped moving another inch. He could tell from the blurry look in her eyes that she had just woken up and was apparently shocked at their proximity to one another. "What are you doing?" Intuitively, she shoved him aside. Di Fui took a huge step back, and the soup in his hand almost spilled to the ground. As Gu Shijio abruptly got up from her slumber, she could finally see the bowl in his hand and slowly put the pieces together. "Oh, you are here to deliver the soup. I thought." She was still trying to find her words. The unpleasant encounter with her disciple had certainly scarred her, so she thought that Di Fui was going to kiss her as well. Luckily, it was only a push. She would be so embarrassed if she struck him for nothing. "I can have it." She sat right up and reached out to him to ask for the soup. The ache in her head was slightly annoying, so it was definitely helpful to have some soup to sober herself up. What a sweet gesture, she thought. In fact, she was moved by his thoughtfulness. She reached out for the bowl, and their fingers accidentally touched. Bang! The bowl slipped right through his fingers. Gu Shijio did not understand what had happened. Why did he take his hand away so hurriedly? Also, the man's fingers were rather warm, and he looked somewhat agitated. Gu Shijio had never seen him in such a state before. Chapter 2893. Aren't you going to blame me? He was obviously behaving guilty, but for nothing. Why didn't you hold it nicely? It is all right. I will ask them to make another, Di Fui uttered before quickly attempting to leave. Hold on, Gu Shijio said while pulling his sleeves. Di Fui froze. You, shocked, he turned around and saw Gu Shijio standing next to him. She nestled up against him, and their faces were, again, in close proximity. He could already feel her breath of warm air against his cheeks. Could she be throwing herself at him? Perhaps she also felt the same about him? After all, it was his name that she uttered, even in her sleep. The sight of her being so close to him had left him breathless. He began palpitating with excitement as he asked, What is the matter? She was standing so close to him right now, so close that all it took was a slight shift for his lips to meet hers. The rush of blood was blurring out his senses again, and he was about to give in to his lustful desires. There was no time for him to assess the situation carefully. Instead, he gave her a forceful pull and held her tightly in a warm embrace. He secured his arms around her small waist before he dived for her lips. Unfortunately, their lips never touched. All he could feel was one of her fingertips. She was pointing her finger at him, and he had not seen it coming. He somehow put his lips on her finger instead. Dumbfounded, he stopped moving. Quickly, Gu Shijio pulled her finger away from his lips. With a sniff, she could already tell that something was not right. You are poisoned. He was still clasping her in his arms when she told him, but as soon as she made the observation, she gave his body a few quick touches to fix some acupuncture points. Soon, the boiling desire in his body ceased, and his senses returned. He took a hurried step back and said hoarsely, Hey, you are poisoned. She pointed a finger at him to direct his attention. She looked at him fixedly before making a thorough explanation. Your eyes are slightly tinged with blood. Though it is a normal sign of excitement, the white parts of your eyes are also tinted with a slight shade of blue, which should not be happening. Your irises look different as well, and so do your lips. They are glowing faintly. She continued to list a series of differences. This is a sign that you have been poisoned with a love filter, she finally concluded. Di Fui was at a loss for words. He looked at her apologetically and asked with a voice full of guilt, Aren't you going to blame me? Why should I blame you? You are poisoned, which is why you lost control of yourself. Don't worry. I know how to fix it, Gu Shijio comforted. Di Fui looked quite disappointed. As soon as his senses returned, he immediately realized that the poison in his body was already intercepted and cut off from his bloodstream, thanks to Gu Shijio. It did not take long for him to be convinced that he was, indeed, poisoned. He would surely find the culprit later. But meanwhile, he was somewhat disappointed by the way Gu Shijio remained so calm about his condition. She hardly expressed any sort of emotion. Perhaps, the only reason she got so close to him in the first place was to examine his condition. The poison in his body was still taking effect, though less aggressively. However, he no longer felt the same passion for Gu Shijio as before. Would you do the same to another man? He asked icily. Gu Shijio looked at him rather confusedly. I would do the same. Should I stand aside and watch a man as he embarrasses himself? Moreover, we are partners. I am bound by duty to help you. Besides, after everything that you have done for me, it is the least that I could do. Di Fui took a moment to think about what she said. Then, as he studied her posture, he asked, Are you going to treat my symptoms, looking like this? Chapter 2894. Aren't you going to blame me? 2. Like this? What? Gu Shijio looked at herself, only to realize that she was not appropriately dressed. Her clothes were still unbuttoned, and she was not even wearing pants. Her cheeks started to blush crimson. Hastily, she tidied up her clothes and felt so embarrassed. She should have foreseen the misbehavior coming when she got drunk. The whole bed would usually be a mess. Very often, she would kick the sheets away because it would be too warm, which was the same thing that she would do to her clothes. Gu Shijio normally drank alone, so it was not a problem until now. Gu Shijio knew that she was good at holding her liquor. She thought that it would be easy to stay in control but did not realize that the aftereffect of the alcohol was much stronger than she had expected. Had the alcohol become stronger, or had her body become weaker? Anyway, there was no time to sort out that problem now. She needed to help Di Fui first, so she quickly made herself appropriate. Meanwhile, Di Fui took the time to start meditating. He sat with his legs crossed, completely at peace. After a while, he opened his eyes, only to reveal his confusion on the matter. He had a unique physique that would usually shield him from the harm of most poisons. Even when he was unfortunately poisoned, a simple session of meditation was already enough for him to extract all the toxins from his body. This time, the meditation did not help him at all. He could tell that the toxins still lingered in his system. His throat started to itch again, which was a sign that the symptoms were returning. The poison was truly one of a kind. Gu Shijio also noticed the strength of it and realized that she could help him recover. "Let me help," she offered. As an experienced doctor, she was confident that there was nothing she could not solve. She suspected that the love filter should only be a small matter. "What is your plan?" Di Fui stared at her with honest bafflement as he asked. The fiery look in his eyes was hard to ignore. Gu Shijio gave him a few gentle taps on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry. I have my own ways." She then dived straight into the treatment. Di Fui could feel his body temperature rising rapidly. His eyes were, once again, tinged with blood. He tried very hard to stay calm, though the fierce desire had long clouded his senses. Gu Shijio had seen people being poisoned by the love filter. They became madmen who targeted any woman in sight. There was nothing that could stop them. Apparently, Di Fui was in a fight with himself, but he managed to keep calm so far. The young man's patience was impressive, and Gu Shijio liked that about him. She continued to try a few ways to cure the poison, but all attempts were in vain. Troubled, she frowned at him. It was very rare for her to find a poison that she could not cure. Could it be a new type of poison? Although it was her first encounter with the poison, she felt like she had actually seen it somewhere as she found one of the materials used in the making of the poison rather familiar. Unfortunately, she was now certain that nothing in her storage bag could be the cure. Therefore, the only way to help Di Fui was to refine the cure on the spot. Fortunately, she had brought enough items with her. As soon as she gathered all the ingredients she needed, she immediately began the alchemy. As she worked, the love filter had started to spread across Di Fui's body. Sweat could be seen rolling down all around his body, yet they soon evaporated because of his dry, hot skin. Fortunately for him, it did not take long for Gu Shijio to produce a new cure. "Here, try this," she offered. Di Fui swallowed the pill as a whole without any delay. Gu Shijio continued to observe him and soon realized that the redness on his cheeks started to fade. In fact, his complexion was slowly returning to normal. She then took a reading on his wrist and noticed that his thumping heart was already slowing down. Relieved, the woman was once again convinced that there was nothing she could not solve. "Jio, if the toxins could not be cured, what would you have done?" Di Fui suddenly asked. "Are you doubting my abilities?" "Don't worry, there is no poison that I cannot cure," Gu Shijio reassured. Chapter 2895. Aren't you going to blame me? 3. I was asking you hypothetically. Gu Shijio paused for a moment to think about the weird question that Di Fui was asking. Before she could say anything, Di Fui added, "Would you watch as my body exploded and rot?" To which she answered right away, "Of course not." "Then what would you have done?" he quickly asked. Gu Shijio felt quite embarrassed to answer the question, so she shrugged a little and tried to answer casually, "I would find you a lady?" Di Fui's face immediately sank. "Don't worry, I know you are picky when it comes to cleanliness. Most girls will not even be on your list. I need to find you a good lady from a nice family." "So, you're telling me that I should exploit the lady?" "It is not exploitation, is it? Many ladies are obsessed with you. They have been waiting outside this building for you every single day. We can easily get one of them to help." Di Fui was even more disappointed. What should I do after the urge disappears? Ignore her when her duty is done? Gu Shijio paused to think about it. "Of course not. You have to marry her. Didn't you tell me that I am not allowed to have a concubine once we are married?" Gu Shijio sighed. "Formally, you are not allowed to, but all she needs to do is to wait for 3 years. Our marriage will be dissolved by then, so you can make her your concubine, or even your wife, for all I care. If she thinks that the wait is too long, fine, we can sort out our priorities. You can marry her first once her duty is done, since our wedding will not take place until 20 days later. At least people will have nothing to say about her." Gu Shijio was rather generous. In fact, She felt that it was unfair for the lady to be withheld from compensation after she had done her duty. Overall, Gu Shijio was somewhat satisfied with her answer, so she thought that he would be impressed. To her dismay, his facial expression changed to a look of utter disappointment. She could tell from his eyes that he was somewhat irritated. "You are unusually generous." He threw her a sarcastic reply before walking away. Gu Shijio was surprised by the sudden change. She followed him and asked, "Where are you going?" As she was not sure if the toxins in his body had been completely extracted, she still wanted to observe him. "To find me a nice lady," Di Fui scornfully replied. He then walked faster and left her behind. Gu Shijio did not understand his irritation. Had she said something wrong? She graciously changed their entire plan all for his sake. What more could he ask for? From the way he threw his tantrum, she assumed that the toxins were already removed. She also suspected that his remark about finding a new lady was untrue. But for the next 2 days, Di Fui never showed up once. He seemed quite occupied. He did not come back during the day, or even after work. She asked the servant about his whereabouts, but he was equally uninformed. Nevertheless, what Gu Shijio noticed was the absence of another servant. There was supposed to be 2 of them. The missing one was supposed to be in charge of the chores, so Gu Shijio was quite concerned about his safety. She asked his companion where the servant might be, and she was told that Di Fui took him away. Perhaps Di Fui needed the servant to be by his side at all times. In other news, something shocking had happened recently. The Devil King was assassinated, which Gu Shijio had seen coming for quite some time. Therefore, the parlous state of the Devil Kingdom continued to deteriorate. The entire kingdom was determined to catch the criminal. However, Gu Shijio remained unbothered. She stuck to her daily routine, which was to collect the spiritual stones. Without Di Fui, there was no need for her to put on a show. On the 3rd day, she left her room and did not come back. She had to travel far to get to a hill where there were more spiritual stones were available. Since dusk was already falling, she decided to stay the night. Chapter 2896. A coincidence. The hill was quite a distance away from the city. At night, she counted what she had collected after an entire day and realized that she was short of 20 pieces. She needed just 1 day more to harvest the rest. Therefore, she decided to save the hassle of traveling back and forth and stayed the night. The hill that had numerous spiritual stones was one of the very few places in the Devil Kingdom that she could see the full moon. It was the time of the month where the whole disk of the moon was illuminated. The sky could be seen scattered with white clouds. Gu Shijio slowly massaged her aching wrist, which was sore from a full day of work. The full moon was too beautiful to be missed, so she decided to sit on a rock and watch the moon. The place was quiet since some ferocious beasts inhabited the hill, which managed to keep most people away. Besides, the spiritual stones had no value to the people in the Devil Kingdom, so not many bothered to come. Therefore, she could spend her time alone and undisturbed. Her kung fu was powerful enough to keep her safe from the ferocious beasts. In fact, a simple wizardry barrier was enough to keep her safe. There was nothing that she needed to worry about. Furthermore, since she was quite tired from a long day of work, she soon dozed off by the stone. Surprisingly, she could hear someone talking nearby. "National Master, this is the most beautiful place in all of the Devil Kingdom. Isn't it nice?" A clear and melodious was heard. It was the voice of the little princess. "It's not bad," Di Fui casually answered. All of a sudden, Gu Shijio became wide awake. She looked around and saw the duo from afar. Di Fui and the little princess, Meng Luqing, were strolling side by side. Unfortunately, the wizardry barrier that Gu Shijio had set up could only keep the beasts away but could hide her from the pair. It did not take long for them to realize she was there. The little princess looked surprised. "Isn't she Miss Jio?" She could see Di Fui's deep eyes under the moonlight as he asked, "Are you spending the night here?" He took a moment to study her. Gu Shijio brushed the grass away from her dress before standing up. "I need to come again tomorrow, so I thought I might as well stay here." She locked her gaze on the duo and recalled Di Fui's last words to her. He said he was going to find a lady. Was the little princess the one for him? Gu Shijio was confident that the toxins had been removed from his body. Therefore, there was no need for him to find another woman. Meanwhile, the little princess could not keep her eyes off from Gu Shijio. Unsteadily, she stumbled and fell into Di Fuyi's arms. "Be careful," he said while helping her up. The little princess could be seen blushing. "I will be more careful." "Whatever you say," she answered with a nod. She then gave Gu Shijio a quick look, as if showing off. "National Master, why don't we take a walk over there? It is a good spot to watch the moon," the little princess swiftly suggested. "Sure." Di Fuyi seemed to be in a good mood. Quickly, they walked away together. Puzzled, Gu Shijio sat back down on the rock and gave her temples a good rub. Di Fuyi had been acting rather cold and reserved. Perhaps he was still mad at her. She should talk to him tomorrow when her work was all done. It had been a very long day for her, so she needed to rest for the time being. A good night's sleep was all she needed, as there was plenty of hard work to do in the morning. Quickly, she closed her eyes. But soon she realized that she could no longer sleep. It was rather noisy at the other end of the hill. Gu Shijio never knew that the little princess could be so talkative and vivacious. She certainly had an arsenal of dramatic expressions to showcase. "Wow, it is so beautiful. This is really the most beautiful place." Chapter 2897. The dissolution of their engagement. National Master, you are so thoughtful for bringing these snacks along. They are so delicious. Ah, there is also wine. This is awesome. The dramatic expressions went on and on. It was a lot of noise. With a sigh, Gu Shijio cast a spell to make the barrier soundproof. Finally, peace returned, but it did not take long for her to become distracted by the smell of good food. All of a sudden, Gu Shijio opened her eyes widely. She could tell from the smell of the food that it was her favorite cookie made with passion fruit. Most importantly, it was from Restaurant Baoyan. Restaurant Baoyan was very well known for its excellent cookies. One try was enough for Gu Shijio to become hooked. However, the number of cookies available was very limited. Only a small amount was produced each day. There was no guarantee that one could buy the cookies even if they joined the queue early. Di Fuyi once promised that he would buy her some cookies from there. But when he finally bought them, they were not for her. Gu Shijio took a quick look and saw the cookies that were placed neatly before them as the duo enjoyed their glasses of wine. Since she could only see Di Fuyi's back, there was no way she could see his expression. But from the look of the little prince's happy face, she seemed to be genuinely having a great time. All of a sudden, the little princess caught Gu Shijio's curious eyes. So she turned around and said something to Di Fuyi. "Thanks for the soundproof wizardry barrier." Gu Shijio called not hear anything she said, but she could read her lips. "We cannot finish these snacks, anyway. Should we send your fiancé a few pieces?" Di Fuyi said something in return, which prompted the little princess to reply, "Never mind, then." Even without hearing what Di Fuyi said, Gu Shijio already knew that he would reject the idea. Frankly, she was quite disappointed by it. As her fiancé, it was not appropriate for him to just leave her aside and spend his time with someone else. Perhaps he was reluctant to keep the show going. But if that were the case, should the wedding be carried on as planned? Gu Shijio thought that it might make sense for her to start looking for someone else. Fortunately, the news about her wedding was not widespread. Otherwise, she would be so embarrassed if no groom showed up at the wedding. Imagine if the creator of the universe were to stand there alone and marry no one. In an attempt to resolve the matter quickly, she wondered if Jusi would agree to her request again, but she suspected that he would not entertain it. Jusi had been avoiding her these days, so it was very unlikely that he would put himself in such a vulnerable situation with her again. As it was rather difficult to find a suitable candidate, Gu Shijio could not help but feel annoyed at the sudden change. She took another look at the cookies and saw that only a few pieces remained. Apparently, the little princess had savored almost everything. Frustrated, Gu Shijio closed her eyes and sighed. Her love for food was very apparent, especially when the food was fresh. There was always some food in her bag, But not much was left this time since she had been away for so long. After a long day of harvesting the spiritual stones, she had actually finished what was left. Ever since she caught a whiff of the smell of the cookies, her stomach had been rumbling a little. Nevertheless, her exhaustion soon overcame her hunger. She closed her eyes and sealed the barrier from the scent as well. When there was no distraction, she soon fell asleep. After resting for some time, Gu Shijio suddenly woke up and realized that the moon was still well lit, along with many stars that twinkled across the entire night sky. There was no one there at the other end of the hill. They were long gone. There was only midnight serenity that surrounded the hill. Chapter 2898. The Dissolution of Their Engagement, 2. Gu Shijio was surprised that her exhaustion did not get her through a good night's sleep. After a few twists and turns, she still could not fall back to sleep. She uncurled her body with a wide stretch and sat right up. Maybe it was time to give Di Fui a call. Although the man would probably be asleep, she could not resist giving him a call. There were things that she needed to talk to him about. It only took a second for Di Fui to pick up the call. "What is the matter?" His voice sounded a little hoarse, like he had just woken up. "Fui, do you regret your decision?" Gu Shijio hesitantly asked. "Regret what decision?" "Regret putting on a show with me." "So what if I do? And what if I don't?" Di Fui answered somewhat ambiguously. The way he answered made her assume that he must have regretted it. She knew that it was coming all along. With a sigh, she realized that she would rather trouble someone else, as she still owed Di Fui a debt of gratitude. She did not want to burden him with this matter anymore and should offer him a way out. "Let's cancel the wedding." Di Fui took a moment to absorb her sudden request. "Why?" he asked in a light tone, as if not believing Gu Shijio really wanted to go through with it. Gu Shijio tried to sound as reasonable as possible. "As I said, you are not allowed to marry another woman in the first 3 years of our marriage. Our reputation may be at stake when there are gossips. Now that you have already found the princess, I want you to have your freedom to love her. Luckily, my identity is still a well-kept secret, so no one knows who I really am. Even if the wedding is cancelled, most people will not even notice. So you and the princess, are you jealous?" Di Fui suddenly interrupted. "Jealous?" Gu Shijio laughed at the silliness. "No, honestly." She gave him a short pause before resuming calmly. "All right, that is it. I will find someone else to keep the show going." "Are you angry?" Amused, Gu Shijio laughed out loud. "I am not. Don't worry, I can never be angry with you. After all, you are not obliged to help me. Even without the wedding, you will still be a friend of mine." It was yet another specimen of her great generosity towards Di Fui. Di Fui did not finish his sentence before the call was ended. Just like that, everything was said and done. There was no need for any further entanglement. Relieved, Gu Shijio decided to stretch to get ready for another day of work. If she could not sleep, she might as well get down to work. When all of the spiritual stones were collected, her mission would be deemed complete. She would then be free to leave the Devil Kingdom since she was no longer needed here. She disengaged the wizardry barrier and started walking towards one of the many stones scattered around the hill. From a distance, she started casting a spell. However, next to the stone that she laid on, sudden wisps of red smoke rose into the air and transformed into a giant fist. Aggressively, it started attacking her. Startled, Gu Shijio took a huge leap to the back from the boulder. She was at least 10 feet away. Therefore, the red fist missed her. With a quick sway, it slowly gathered and transformed into the shape of a man. The young man in red stood proudly before her. He looked at her with his sharp eyes, but a mark on his forehead was his most prominent feature. His red, supple lips glistened under the moonlight, which greatly complemented his big red robes. There he stood, looking as graceful as ever. Gu Shijio realized that his eyes were dark emerald as he fixedly stared at her as if inviting her to fight. Chapter 2899. The Dissolution of Their Engagement, 3. "Miss Jio, your kung fu is impressive," the man spoke in an alluring tone. Gu Shijio was impressed by the man's kung fu as well. If her power were any weaker, she would already have been crushed. Meanwhile, from the intensity of the strike, she could safely conclude that the man was a great devil. A great devil of the Devil Kingdom was equivalent to a great deity in the outside world, which was certainly a rarity. There were many great talents and strange people that Gu Shijio had encountered in her lifetime. She knew that there were only two prominent great devils. The first one was the regent, and the second was his son, Mengwia. His son was always traveling the world, so he had not spent a lot of time in the Devil Kingdom. It seemed that he was disinterested in his father's political game, so no one paid much attention to him. All Gu Shijio knew about him was his existence. Nevertheless, as soon as he made his move, Gu Shijio could immediately recognize him. Mengwia, the man did not deny it. It seems you do know a lot of people. He took a step forward, with his eyes still locked intently at her. Miss Jiu, would you come with me? He tried to make himself sound as inviting as possible. In fact, his eyes were somewhat seducing her to follow him. Actually, he was using the bewitching spell, which was quite a move to use for a first encounter. Soon, Gu Shijio found herself caught in his eyes. Quickly, she started to lose her balance and stared back at him blankly. Repeatedly, she answered, "I will follow you." Smilingly, Mengwia seemed satisfied with the result. The mark on his forehead was blinking with a faint light now as he said, "That is right. Come with me and I shall treat you well." He waved his hand at her and released an intensely fragrant smell. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio started swaying on her feet before eventually collapsing into the man's arms. Mengwia looked down at the woman in his embrace and asked, "Miss Jiu, do you think I am beautiful?" "Yes, you are as beautiful as a blossoming flower." Mengwia was happy with her compliment. "That is great to know. You have lovely eyes." He gave his hand another wave at her to shut her eyes. The lingering moonlight lit up the entire hill, but there was no sign of anyone around. Di Fui found himself on the spot where Gu Shijio had rested before looking a little pale. Had she left? Her work was not done yet, right? She needed 32 more pieces. That should be another full day of work. How could she simply abandon her task? Di Fui took a quick glance around the hill, but could not see anyone. Where had she gone? Although Di Fui was concerned for her well-being, Gu Zijia's kung fu should be enough for her to keep almost anyone away. That thought put his mind at ease a little. Nevertheless, he decided to contact her using a spell, but she did not pick up the call. Was she ignoring him? How could she cancel their wedding so easily? Having known her, she would not simply ignore him this way. Moreover, from the way she proposed the cancellation, she sounded quite carefree about it. It was normal for her to feel a little lost, as it would be quite troublesome for her to find another man to take over his role. She even mentioned that he was still a friend, so there was no point in avoiding him. Furthermore, she would not leave unless she had all the stones that she needed. Therefore, her sudden disappearance must be a sign of danger. Di Fui closed his eyes and was determined to stay calm at all costs. A thorough search was then carried out on every inch of the hill. After some time, Di Fui caught hold of a rather strong smell coming from one of the spiritual stones. Corals of 3 feet tall surrounded the place along with white doors that were made from the shells of hawksbill turtles. These doors were currently swaying along with the currents. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.